UK, but we decided to meet here instead.
Yeah, it was a very tough process. Just going London, Nottingham, was too much. So I
Dubai's
decided to
easy.
just come here. Yeah,
That's it,
Dubai,
yeah. But like how we like to start things off is, I'm sure there's a lot of people who know you because by now you have done a lot of interviews with different prop firms, etc.
Yeah, sure.
But just a brief story of how you got to where you are today, and then we'll just take it from there.
All right. So first started trading back when I was maybe 16. I'm 24 now. So 16, 17, first discovered trading was binary options.
Okay.
If you ever heard of them, you know, the IQ option thing. It was kind of a gambling thing, but yeah. Also a little bit of background. I was a professional basketball player.
Yeah, I can
So
see
ever
that
since
now.
was yeah.
For those who don't know, he's like 7 foot tall. He's massive.
Yeah, I'm very big. So basketball in Romania played when I was around 16. I was playing for senior, like first league, also national team. So I was a very good player, let's say, top 15 of in the country. Then I had a very nasty accident. I broke my back.
Oh wow.
So yeah, after that, just staying in bed for a few months, couldn't move. So I had to, I don't know, discover stuff. So I started reading psychology books, wanted to get into entrepreneurship, and yeah, discovered trading, binary options. Didn't really do much then, didn't have money, but I did make a few $100, let's say, so not much. And yeah, then I started another business, e-commerce, stuff like that, did some money, and then got back into trading through the initial route, the usual route of Instagram gurus, find it there. And yeah, ever since then I just started to grow to this level.
From there. How, in terms of an accident, was that through basketball?
Yeah, basketball. Yeah.
So what was that like for you? Obviously, you were playing at a very high level.
Yeah.
Have this accident. Of course, at the time, I imagine your goals were aligned in that direction. And they had to change.
Yeah, most think so, but not really, because Europe is good for sports, basketball. Romania is not good for sports.
Okay.
Like, you didn't really have a future.
Okay.
My salary was around, I don't know, 500 euros per month. So not that much, right? And yeah, wasn't really my goal to go there, but I really liked. It's just, you grow up with something, you just keep doing it until I don't know, it's over. But the accident did change quite a lot in my mentality, because also, for those who don't know, people who play sports don't really have the best mentality when it comes to life, especially Romania, because it's a poor country. So staying alone, then looking online for stuff, reading, really changed my mentality. And when I tried to go back after 3 months to go through the recovery, something clicked in me, and I was like, this is not fit for me, because I was seeing everyone around me, how they think, and I kind of grew past that. So yeah, it was tough. I still have problems, but sports really helps you in life. The discipline that you get, because man, practicing like 3 times a day, it's not easy. And then having games, gotta stay consistent, discipline, sleep, eat well, all that kind of stuff. But I think that was a very major key in my success. Yeah.
No, definitely, and a lot of people can take that on board, and you see that across whether it's people from the military or people who, as you say, like high-level sports. That level of discipline that's instilled with them really helps to translate into trading.
Yeah, it does.
No doubt, there's probably many lessons when going into the trading journey. You mentioned though you came across trading the usual way, sort of like Instagram gurus, etc. So how did you overcome that? Because a lot of people, obviously, you look at that and then you see a certain image, and then there'll be a process of you having to sort of get rid of the image and focus on the skill. So what was that like for
Obviously, you? At first year, I was focused on making money, getting rich quick. Seemed like such an easy way, right? I think that's the same for everyone, right? But the way I overcame it, I think, because I tried to replicate. So me as a person, I always try to replicate successful people. So I was looking at a successful person, individual, and I was trying to not replicate their success, but replicate what they're doing, right, day to day. Again, discipline and consistency, right? So I was replicating what they were doing on charts, off charts, discipline, all that, but it just wasn't working, right? They were winning trades, I was losing trades, but doing the same thing. So that's when I kind of figured it's more marketing, especially since, you buy some services and they don't even answer to you anymore, stuff like that. So you kind of understand it's just a business for them, right? It's just marketing. So yeah, after a year and a half struggling with that, just decided to put my head down on the charts, just me and the charts, and try to figure out what to do. Yeah.
So more that sort of solitude, focused on yourself.
Yeah.
Would you say year and a half?
The process since I started? Yeah. And after that, it took me like 2 years to just
to nail it down.
Down.
What was it like though, focusing on yourself? Because I've obviously, as you can imagine, had a lot of people on the podcast, and the ones who really have excelled, they talk about having a moment like that where they separate themselves, they stop listening to other people, focusing on other people. They focus on themselves for, some say 6 months, some say a year, some say longer. But that solitude and that sort of silence is really what accelerated their growth.
Yeah, and again, I saw that pattern in successful people, so I replicated it. After I stopped playing basketball, so that was around 17, 18 years old. I was very popular in my country, playing at a high level. So that's when I decided to cut everything off.
Mm-hmm.
So deleted all my socials, changed my number, basically just restarted by myself. Moved to a new place, rented a place, even if I wasn't really that successful. Decided to go at it myself, and that really grows you. Like being alone, trying to figure things out, not having enough money maybe for rent or food, that changes you. And that's a big key of success. But again, I saw that in successful people, so I tried to replicate it. Try to go through the trenches, you know.
Definitely. Is that something you still do to this day? Because obviously now you've reached a level of success.
I mean, yeah, I still don't have friends. So just because country. Romania is not a good country in terms of people. They try to bite your hand, stuff like that. So I decided not give my trust and friendship to anyone. And just me and my wifey pushing through life, and I don't need anyone.
Fair enough. We'll come back to that for sure. Yeah. And in regards to your journey then, so what were there any key moments or key things that you may have learned or realized that helped you to then accelerate?
In terms of trading or just like strategy-wise or psychology?
Anything, yeah. Anything in that period where you weren't winning to then obviously starting to win.
Yeah, definitely. It's the thing that really, because again, when you first start trading, you want to make money, right? But that wasn't really working, so I decided to let's focus on the right things, right? So I tried to focus on discipline and consistency. So I took the same thing from playing sports, tried to replicate it into trading. So I only focused every single day on discipline and consistency. So waking up same time, sitting on the charts same time, same hours, trading the same pairs, using the same time frames, all that kind of stuff. So I just focused on that, doing that every single day. And of course I started with one pair, just did that all over again, same day. Every single day doing the same stuff. Yeah, and that really accelerates it.
So just build the sort of momentum over time.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you do the same thing, if you focus on the input, so if you do the same thing every single day, at some point it's gonna come back.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of your journey, then, when was it that you did you go personal account first, or did you go prop firm straight away?
First, I did personal account because back then was just only FTMO, I think, which now I can trade with, but that's a different story. Yeah. Just did personal account. Everyone was advertising personal accounts, but they were advertising offshore brokers. I'm sure you probably know some that were very popular that day, those times. Yeah, just did some personal trading. I think it was more not really consistency based, because obviously if you have a low balance, you kind of need to push the risk. But it worked, right? I did some money, and then slowly started to go into the prop firm space for capital. And
so when did you first come across the evaluation companies? What was it that sort of caught your eye first?
Like I said, it was just FTMO.
Yeah.
Some influencers started promoting it as a way to, again, gain capital. Of course, starting out, you don't really understand how they work, right? That they're most likely made against you. But that was the first company. Tried a few evaluations with them, and bro, it was a whole different thing, because you have very strict risk management rules.
Yeah.
So if you're not really disciplined, then you can never pass it or get a life account. Yeah.
Definitely. And was there anything you had to change when going from that, say, the personal account with low balance to obviously trying to then pass these?
Yeah, the thing that is just mental, right? It's just psychology, because you only have 10% risk on a personal account. You have a way more risk in terms of percentage. I had to change the way I think. But again, at first I wasn't really successful with them. I was just failing.
Yes.
Even if I was profitable on my own accounts, I was failing the evaluations, because it's also the balance, right? Because it messes with your head. But I had to change quite a few things when it comes to risk management, discipline, and also tried not to rush it. Even if back then there was minimum trading days and max trading days, you only had 30 days, 36 days. So it was a different story. Also the lower profit split, you remember, 75%.
Yeah.
A lot have changed. Yeah.
Things get more competitive, you know.
Yeah.
And was there anything specific? So you mentioned that obviously you had to change some things. Was there anything that comes to mind of exactly what you had to change?
Not really. Just trying to lower the risk.
Mm-hmm.
0.5%, 1% max, and of course the trading days really makes you trade more.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to change that also, coming from a personal account where you don't really trade much, to try to make trades. Obviously using 0.5% risk to reach a 10% target. That's quite a lot of trades, but yeah, that's a thing I need to change.
Definitely. And you said you lost quite a lot before obviously starting to pass. Do you know how many accounts you may have lost?
I think it was 5, 6, something along those lines. Yeah,
it's not too bad. And then, in regards to account sizes, did you go straight into the sort of larger size accounts, or did you?
Yeah, I think my first account was just 100K. Yeah, that was the max they were offering back then. Yeah.
So you started on the higher accounts. And
because you just gotta go straight to it. I'm a very straight to it person, so I don't really like to go small. I'd rather just jump and then see what happens.
Try and work it out.
Yeah, try to work it out.
Yeah. And then, of course, from there, then, as I said, like at the beginning, you've done many interviews, with many of the companies, and you've max funded with a lot of companies as well. I think. What was the highest amount you had in total?
$5.5 million. Yeah.
So what was that like? Obviously, going through from trading a small account to then scaling to such a high level.
The skilled challenge.
With Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, you can pick up the tab even when you forget your wallet.
I got this.
The skilled challenge is finally here. Enjoy the lowest
This is a big change, but that's years of work. That doesn't just happen overnight, and there's more backstory to that, because after FTMO there was funding talent. Maybe we can go through that a little bit, because that was maybe the biggest jump, right? Because coming from, let's say, 100K account FTMO, then funding talent came in, and I think their max capital was 300K or even 400K. Don't really remember. 300. Yeah, 300. So it was a big jump passing. Obviously, when they introduced the evaluation model, similar, and that's when I started to make some real money, like bigger money, right? I think my biggest payout was around 50,000 just on them, and after that payout, I had a bigger month. Trading gold, I still have the screenshots. I think it was around 80-something thousand. Wow. I was just trading gold back then. This was after, I think, right when COVID was happening, I think 2020.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, so it was very volatile and was moving quite a lot. So had a good month, was waiting for the payout, and then you know what happened. So
it closed down because of you as well.
I don't know, man. There were other people doing more than that.
Well, I feel like, do you remember the conditions? Because I remember I was trading at the same time. I got max funded with
conditions
them.
in terms of
like, obviously all the prop firms use demo, right?
Yeah,
simulated accounts, right? But they were renowned for having no slippage, no commissions, low spreads, and therefore everyone could. Some people were gaming the system, so they were cheating. But there were people like yourself, maybe, and a lot of other traders who were trading fine. But, they made large profits at the same time, and it came to a point where, because the conditions were so good,
I know.
They couldn't pay them out.
Yeah, I know.
Do you remember what the conditions were like?
Obviously, it was very good. Yeah, coming from FTMO, I think it was also my Forex funds was back then.
Yeah, they were around.
But they had very bad spread. So obviously fund internet. Yeah, I remember. It was very no slippage. Spread on gold was like 10 points, 15 points, no commission. So obviously that helps, right?
Of course.
Because if you go aggressive and you scalp, you can just go break even and not
Especially with
lose
gold,
it. Yeah. So I think that was a big part of the success with them. Yeah. But that wasn't sustainable, right?
Of course, yeah. We'll come back to that for sure, because it's very interesting the space we're in when we have that example, especially if you've traded there as well. And what was that like then? Obviously, you had an 80k payout pending, but then you didn't get it. Did that impact you at all?
I mean, I kind of saw it coming. With prop firms, I see it coming. With what happened recently, I also saw it coming. So I kind of saw it coming because it wasn't, if you think about it as a business perspective, can be sustainable, right? So I was like, I made a profit. I was looking at it. I was like, if I get it, that's fine. If I don't, then just gonna keep moving forward. So it was kind of tough, of course, not receiving it. I think I got 15% of it or something like that. I think they paid that.
Yeah, small amount. Yeah.
So it was like 15,000 or something. I can't remember. So at least I got something, right? I was happy with that. And then kind of took a break from prop firm space. Then
that happened. I did the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
It's just like it kind of messes with your head a bit. Like
it does,
you don't want to waste. It's more the waste of time, I think, more than anything. Because you spend so long to do the challenges, go through all that heartache, and then it just gets taken away like that.
I know.
So but then obviously from there, did you go on like a revenge sort of mindset and just like go for all the firms? And get
no. Just I tried to get funding with my Forex funds, and I lost a few challenges because I was in that mindset, of course. So it's very happens to everyone. And then just kind of took a break, to be honest. I was kind of sick of it, let's say. Took a break, went back to trading personal capital for a while until, 1.5 years ago, I think, when I got back into prop firm space.
So just a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So so in about 18 months you've scaled?
Exactly, yeah. No, the scaling came in like 3-4 months, to be honest. Wow. Yeah.
What was it? Was there anything in particular? Or was it just that you maybe built enough data to really feel confident in your edge?
So after the story, after personal capital, I got into my Forex funds, traded them, got the max funded VIP program, all of that. I was just trading with them, 600k. And I was looking for other prop firms, and I kind of took a few days off and tried to really go into prop firm companies and how they're, the rules and everything.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of figured like most of them don't really copy traders. It's just the fees, and they pay out the winnings. So kind of looks like a online casino or something like that, right? Because you have losers, which are way more percentage wise, and then you have winners that are paid from the losing clients. So if I know I'm going into online casino, let's find a way to not break the rules, but just go around them and find a way to maximize the profits. So that's when I kind of made my own system in trading prop firm, which is basically, let's think of it as a business, just a business, right? You pay some money in exchange for a funding account. So you pay the fees in order to get a live account. Most people, when they come into prop trading companies, they try to go either for the highest account or just go for one account. Right? They buy one account, they trade it for, let's say, a month, they lose it, and then they go over again. And once they become funded on one account, they're like, I need to recover everything, right? I need to recover the fees, all of that. And most of them don't really reach the first payout, do they? Right? So that's when I kind of figured, instead of just getting one account, let's get multiple accounts and increase my odds of winning. Because my goal is to spend money to get a funding account, right? That's my only goal. Once I get the funding account, then I can start basically using that asset to produce me money. So
I want to quickly share what for me has been a hugely positive habit, and that's speaking to a therapist using BetterHelp.
So that's when I went to, let's say, a company, and I was like, instead of buying the max capital, just 2 accounts, let's buy some more accounts. And from there, try to pass at least 1 or 2, right? So it's kind of a business investments idea, right? You invest more money to get a few funding accounts.
Okay. So instead of, let's say, let's try and give an example. So instead of, let's say FTMO, let's say you can get 400k with them, right?
Yeah.
Instead of buying, say, 200Ks, you'll say, okay, I'll buy 4 or more. 4 of those, knowing that some will lose.
Exactly.
And once I've got the past one, do you then switch the mindset once you have the funded account?
Yeah, whole different risk strategy. That's the reason I got banned the most of the prop firms, because the way I utilize risk on a challenge account is way different than a funding account. On the challenge account, my goal is to get funded. So when I started doing this kind of let's say plan, I was going for. I wasn't really buying multiple because I can afford to lose, let's say, 200K account. My goal was to get max funded. So I was buying 200K account and I was just doing 4% risk. Right, trading 4% risk, phase 1. If I get a 1 to 2, I pass it. Right, if I lose it, then I have one more chance, or even one more. If you have like 10-12% drawdown, you still have a little chance of going back. So you just need the winning trade, 1 to 2. That's it. Phase 2, you just need the 1 to 1. Right, so I was doing 4% risk, 4.5%. Just go for 1 to 2, pass it. Phase 2, same thing. So you basically need 2 wins in a row to pass it. Right, it's not that hard. And then once you get a funding account, just kind of low risk. Because as a business asset, if you invest some money, let's say you invest $5,000 or $10,000 to get 400K in funding, you just need 0.5%, 1% every payout, right? And just use that. And that's the mindset shift that I had. Instead of focusing on just trading the account the whole 2 weeks or 1 month, let's just find the quality setups, use 0.5% risk, go for 1 to 2, have 1%, wait for payout, and use that money to reinvest. So that's how I did it.
No, fair enough. Because it's, at the end of the day, there's no, well, as far as I know, there's no rule set in terms of the challenges, right?
There isn't,
a lot of these evaluation companies, the rules come in on the funded account. You know, so like they say, like even the ones that say you can't trade news, let's say, or over the weekend on the funded account, on the challenges, you can trade what you want.
Exactly. So it's a whole different thing, right? And most people are calling me gambler now recently on Twitter. Why am I a gambler? Because I'm trying to game the system 1 account at a time, failing 10 accounts until you get 1 fund. I'm buying 10 accounts, I'm passing 2. And I use those 2 to pay off in 1 payout.
Well, it's a mindset. I would say you would be a gambler if you did the same thing on the funded account. Right? But if you're changing it to your actual edge and strategy on the funded account, then that's it's fair enough.
Because most people think if I'm doing the same thing, I'm risking 4% on a funding account. That's why they ban me, right? Because the risk is too much. But that's not the case. Of course, when I was having all those accounts, like 15, 20, I was doing higher risk on some accounts, 2-3%, just because there were so many to manage. So I was trying to aim for bigger targets, not just 1%. But it's a whole different perspective if you think about it.
It's a whole different mindset, 100%, because it's, as you say, what you do is instead of focusing on this one challenge, you know, and stressing about this one challenge, even let's say if you had multiple challenges, but at the end of the day you're stressing about the outcome of that individual one. It comes down to a few things. One, most people can't afford a challenge, but they'll buy one anyway, so they got all this pressure.
Exactly.
But if you treat it like a business and you see it as a business expense and you kind of zoom out and you treat it in this way, your whole aim is just to get funded. So what is the most efficient way for you? Everyone's different. But what's the most efficient way for you to get funded? Now, I know a few people who trade that same way. But in terms of where it gets onto the funded account, that's where the change has to happen. If you don't change, you could still probably make money, but it's going to blow up, and that's where it's like the edge probably won't be there overall. Versus if you're going to switch to your edge and the way that you actually want to trade on the funded, this isn't for everyone, obviously, because most people probably won't be able to handle the emotions of losing. So I'm sure when you've done this, there's been times where you might have lost 2, 3, 4 funded accounts, challenges, in a row to then get the funded one.
Even with you guys, I told you I finally got funded after 6 or 8 tries.
Oh, wow.
So it did take me quite a while. Of course, it was the period where I was just getting banned, losing capital, losing payouts. So it was a bit different psychology-wise.
Of course.
But even if I have 6, 8 tries, that's 2 payouts, 2%. So of course I'm going to make that in the coming months. I don't need to make it in 1 week. Just make it.
So it's understanding probabilities takes time.
And I'm thinking it of long term, right? I'm not thinking just 1 month. I'm thinking 6 months, 12 months. So if my initial cost is $15,000, what can I make in a year with those accounts? I can make 5-6 times more at least. So that's the reason. I did an event in Bucharest with some students, and I explained them the system, and I was asking each one of them, and they were like blowing 6, 7, 8 accounts. Right, so I told them instead of buying 1, buy 6, 7, you pass 2, you trade those live accounts, different risk percentage, 1%, 0.5%, aim for 1 to 1, 1 to 2, which is not hard in 2 weeks. Like, come on, everyone can do that, right? And then just use that money, you recover the investment, you invest more, and you slowly build your capital.
Definitely, Well, at the end of the day, people are losing those accounts anyway, as you said. Like, people are losing 6, 8 more. Like, I've known people who have lost like 20, 30 challenges one at a time. So it is a mindset. Not everyone's going to be able to handle it, because they have to be able to handle the psychology. They need the finances to be able to back it up as well. That's the biggest part, I think. Most people, like I said, they can't afford one challenge, but they'll still spend the money when they shouldn't. They're not in the position yet.
Yeah, but if you only can afford a 100k account, you only afford 500. Why not buy 4 25k accounts?
Yeah,
because your odds of getting one funding account is way bigger, right?
Yeah, no,
so you
fair.
get that, and then you start trading on that.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just
that's fair.
perspective, right?
So who are you banned on? I know you're banned on FTMO, right? I think recently Bespoke, and then was there any more?
There are, but I'm not sure I can talk about that because
That's
the lawsuit threats and everything.
No. Have you got lawsuits?
I've got
pending?
4 right now, including FTMO. But I mean, I can talk about a couple of them. Funding
well, people don't
traders,
understand
like
FTMO because I know people try to bring it up on you and they're like,
Yeah,
you're banned from FTMO. But with FTMO, it was a case where they emailed you, as far as I know, they emailed you saying that your risk is too high, and they just advised you to reduce your risk. I think the only mistake that you made with that was that you then posted it, which they use in their T's and C's. Like, if you post it, we can ban you.
It wasn't just that. It wasn't just that. So obviously, I told you the backstory. 6-7 accounts lost, maybe. I did have a funding account with FTMO. I did withdraw some money, so probably above break-even profits, right? So I came back to it after scaling accounts on my personal name. I wanted to do something on my company name. So I wanted to get some accounts, and obviously, there's a few options for that. FTMO is one of them because you can set up as a company. So I thought, all right, let's just buy 200k accounts, company behalf, his company card, everything. And I did the same system, right? 4% risk. Phase 1, I lost the first trade, won the second one, 1 to 3, passed it. And you go through the 10 trading days, which is like 2 weeks because you can't trade on the weekend. So 2 weeks after, get phase 2 accounts because I was copying the trades between them. So I was just going high probability trades and passed them first try. And then second phase, again, risk 4%, lost the first trade, won the second one. 1 to 2, passed it, right? 2 more weeks, so that's almost 1 month. 1 month. Passed it, had to resubmit my documents, company documents, everything. Waited for a week, emailed them, no answer. All right, 1 week later, I get that email. In that email, it didn't really say, it said about the risk. That it's not sustainable, and then not looking for that. But they also said they're gonna reset my accounts to phase 1, right? So it wasn't it wasn't just a warning. Was right
taking you back.
We're gonna reset your accounts to phase 1 after a month and a half. Like, come on, that's
that's just weird.
Just weird, right? It's weird. So that's when I posted on Twitter and it really blew up. And 1 day later I tried to log in and the account was blocked, and they sent me an email, either you delete the tweets and we refund you, or we just go through the lawsuit. So obviously I deleted just because to get my refund.
Of course,
you know, one and a half month, that's a long time, right? Trading, going through the challenge. Obviously, if I lost the accounts, no email was gonna be sent.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's like it's always interesting when it comes to the winning side.
Exactly. Right? Same
it's
thing
just
with
strange though, because like they could advise you of the risk and then just let you trade the funded account. Yeah,
if they saw me risk 4% on phase 1, why not just
Plus,
send an email then?
Again, it doesn't make sense in terms of like they haven't lost out on the challenges. Right. Obviously, they're gonna have to refund you if you get a payout.
Yeah,
If you don't get a payout, then obviously they get. To
if I was risking 4%, I'm sure I wasn't. I didn't have a high probability to get a payout.
And then recently, you had the Bespoke problem as well. I know with Bespoke, I know that they offer up to.
They were offering
1.2 million funding.
It was 2 million when I first started.
Yeah, it was 2 million, and then I think someone got closed. Or I've heard of someone
else
was
closed
also.
Yeah,
and then they said that person wasn't trading with the right strategies, and they cut him down.
I know a couple of people that texted me when I first started having problems with them, and they texted me. I was like, I had 1.6 million in funding, and then just send me back to the 400k. And that's not fair, is it? If you advertise something, why not just let the traders trade? And if you think about
professionals who don't have the special maybe skill set that's relevant for your trial. Because if you're a prosecutor, you got to get 12 people to agree unanimously on something. So you can't be talking above the head of anybody. And I think that's going to be a real focus of the prosecutors here, is making this a simple, understandable case. And, often the defense tries to make things seem more complex than they are, or they may be complex and just explain the complexities.
I agree with all of that. And I'll just say, I think the makeup of the jury, I think, would be, it doesn't favor one side or the other from what's described. But I think one thing to remember is the jurors can talk to each other, right? So if you have one or two that you educate and they get a point, they can educate the rest of the jury. And so I think the way both sides look at it is they think about, who do I need to arm with the points who can then advocate in the jury room when it comes to deliberations. So maybe they're not all finance people, but if one finance person gets it and they can explain it to the others, that makes sense. And then there may be something that is, more understandable for the postal worker that they can relate to more, that they make more sense. And another important thing is, regardless of finance, a big part of the jury's job is to evaluate witness credibility. And that's something everybody is equipped to do. Indeed, the folks who may not be in front of a computer all day, but rather are delivering the mail to lots of people, talking to lots of people, may have a pretty good sense of what to look at when they're evaluating demeanor to determine whether somebody's lying or not. And they have value to add in that room.
I just add one point that the jurors can't talk now about the case. And I think Sam's saying at the end, when they're set out to deliver it, they can talk amongst themselves. I think that is an important point. I suspect every time I've done a trial, you pretty quickly try to figure out who the foreperson's going to be, and usually you're right, And so oftentimes, to Sam's point, you are trying to get one or two people to be advocates for you, but you really need everybody to kind of understand what's happening. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem, particularly if you're a prosecutor.
Wait, and I'm sorry, who the foreperson's going to be? What does that mean?
So the jurors at the end, when they go back, they'll select somebody who's the foreperson. That's the lead juror who will communicate the notes usually and communicate the final verdict when they come back. So they're kind of the head juror. Their vote's the same as every other juror. It's not different, but they're sort of the nominal head juror. But oftentimes it's a person who may be in a finance case, the person with the finance background, because the other jurors will look to that person and say, hey, why don't you help us lead us through this? Because to Sam's point, you can explain this to us also.
Yeah, the person who was the retired investment banker also had a Stanford MBA. But I think
I'd put my money on that person being the foreperson if I was a betting man right now.
Yeah, I should also say their spouse also was retired and had worked at Berkshire Hathaway. But anyway, the reason, and maybe I should have said this in the phrasing of my question, but the other reason I had wondered about the professional backgrounds of these people is that when you were actually in the room and you were listening to all the prospective jurors, like a very large proportion of them actually worked in finance, probably because it is Lower Manhattan. So just to see that it all got whittled down to only one, I was like, oh, okay. Because it just felt like, there was like a FINRA person and there were like RIAs and like accounting people. There were just like a lot. So anyway, we don't need to belabor this point, but it was just something.
One thing I think would be interesting, I'd love to hear Brian's take on this. If you were defending Sam Bankman-Fried, would you want a finance person or would you want to exclude them? Because I think, on the one hand, they're going to get a lot of the concepts, which is relevant to some of the defenses. But on the other hand, if they're in a traditional financial background, they may be accustomed to more controls than were in place here and may find some of this stuff to be fugazi. What do you think?
I don't think if I were, representing Sam Bankman-Fried, I would want an accountant, a traditional finance person. I would want someone out of the mainstream. I'd want younger people in general. There's certain, you do trade in stereotypes when you're selecting a jury because you have to, because it's a very quick process. In the sense that you're trying to figure out what a person might believe. And you're also doing, just to go into a little bit of deep dive here, sometimes if you have a robust defense team, you're looking up their, social media posts. You're quickly Googling their names. You're trying to figure out about them to learn about their views and if they're generally pro-government or if there's someone who is, had views that are skeptical of government. And if you're the defense, of course, you're looking for people who are skeptical.
And one last question I wanted to ask about this was one of the questions that the prospective jurors had to face was whether or not they had served on a jury before, and if so, whether or not they'd reached a verdict, but the judge did not want to know what the verdict was. I wondered, what was the purpose of that question? And I wondered, would the prosecution be more motivated to pick people who had reached a verdict, and then the defense wouldn't want to pick those people? I was trying to figure that out.
That question's asked for every juror in every type of case, even civil cases. It's a standard question. And I think the goal is, if you're the lawyer, trying to pick a good juror, you want to know if they've been able to reach a verdict. If you're a prosecutor, since 95% of people who go to trial in criminal cases are convicted, it's probably safe to assume that they voted to convict. But if they didn't reach a verdict and you're the defense lawyer, you know that there was a hung juror and that there was some element of whether that juror or others who weren't able to reach a conclusion, and that you would look potentially favorably on, depending on how the juror described it. So that is an important question if you're a prosecutor or a defense lawyer. And for the judge doesn't want people who are disruptive on the jury. He wants this case to go through, and he wants the jury to deliberate and reach a verdict. This judge isn't supposed to have a thought about, whether conviction or acquittal, but this Judge Kaplan wants an orderly process, and that's what he's looking for.
Okay, yeah. By the way, if I remember correctly, I should have checked through my notes, but I'm pretty sure everybody who said that they had served on a jury said that they had reached a verdict. I don't think there was anybody who said they didn't. So that's kind of interesting. All right, so let's move to opening statements. What did you each think of the opening from the prosecution?
So I thought it was a textbook government SDNY opening in terms of the style, well done in terms of being accessible to the jury, simplifying the issues, executed well, as I can tell from the transcript. And I think the general theme was, to explain at a very simple level how a fraud was committed by Sam Bankman-Fried and the essence of the fraud. What was it that made this fraudulent? Telling customers that their money would be safe, repeating that to Congress, saying it in tweets, when in fact, the money could be given out the back door to Alameda. The controls weren't disclosed. Alameda, the funds were going to Alameda, literally to an Alameda bank account when customers thought they were depositing at FTX. And according to the government, Bankman-Fried is taking the money and using it for his own purposes as he wasn't authorized to do. They also gave, I thought, a pretty good roadmap of, here's how we're going to prove the case. We've got documents. We've got cooperating witnesses, and they previewed. These are folks who committed crimes. They've admitted the crimes, scrutinized their testimony, but look for corroborating evidence. What I thought that they did not, I thought they elided over some complicated issues in ways that the defense could exploit, things that are more complicated than they seem and were not necessarily nefarious, but the government is trying to paint them as nefarious by just sort of glossing over the details. One thing I didn't see when I was last on, I said the STNY prosecutors love to say at the end, there are three things. We ask you to do three things. Pay close attention to the evidence, follow Judge Kaplan's instructions on the law, use your common sense. They did not do that here. That was a departure. I'm going to have to talk to Damian Williams, U.S. attorney, about why they chose not to do that after this.
I thought it was a standard, opening statement by prosecutors. One thing I couldn't tell, it didn't seem like there were visuals tied to it, or if there were, they weren't really discussing them. And a lot of times
there were some, I think, but I wasn't in the courtroom, so I didn't see them, but there were a few. There were presentations for both.
Yeah, the defense definitely was clear from the transcript they were using them, because the lawyer was having somebody put it up, right? And so usually you want a simple story with some visuals, and, prosecutors, everything comes down to the close, really. I mean, you want the jury to understand what you're trying to do. You want them to know what to pay attention to, but you're not expecting them to make up their mind. They're not supposed to, the opening statement. So you're really trying to give them a roadmap of how to understand the trial. Both sides are, and how to look at it. And I think, the defense made that a little clearer in how they were presenting it. The lawyer made it very clear, hey, this is how I want you to try to look at things. This is the prism I want you to see things through. But I thought both were pretty standard and nothing really strayed from what was expected in either one.
Interesting. I have to say, my experience in the courtroom was the prosecution was very easy because they used simple words like lied, stole, things like that. But parts of the defense, they used terms that were technical, like security, collateral, margin. And so even though I know this in and out, I was also having a slightly hard time to follow. There was a point where they moved away from that. But I remember thinking, how is that going over with this particular jury? Because I was a little lost also, because he was also speaking, I felt a little bit more quickly than the prosecution.
I personally thought that if I was comparing the two, I thought the defense opening was better and not typical of what you would see in most trials. because they really engaged with the substance of the case. However, I do agree that there were times where Mr. Cohen was sort of not explaining the background, like just jumping in with stuff that the jury had not been given any context for. And I think Brian can tell you, like on the defense side, why does that happen? The defense is much more reactive. So the government gets to plan their opening. They can execute it as they plan it. They can practice it 1,000 times. The defense lawyer is hearing the government opening for the first time, has to react to it, and may have a lot of things going on in terms of the prep. And so, you could sort of see in that defense opening, oh, you got the wrong slide up. Oh, could you go back to that other slide? They're much more like, they have to deal much more in the moment of what's happening. But I still thought on the substance that the defense opening was strong.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, maybe what I also picked up was it definitely felt like the prosecution delivery was like I said, it was just it felt like it was delivered a bit more slowly. And anyway, for whatever reason, I felt like in the courtroom I had an easier time following it.
You need to talk slower than you think, actually. It's one of the hard things about, presenting to a jury is it's not meant to be rapid fire conversation usually. I mean, you need to be yourself, of course. Shouldn't change your personality, but oftentimes myself, there's a lot of adrenaline. You need to like take a beat, take a breath, and remember to just go slower. Because again, you've been living and breathing this case, both sides, for over a year now, or whatever, almost a year now. And everything you understand, and you've got to remember these, people, the 12 plus the alternates. Yeah, I'm sure they've heard about it, but they don't. You're now throwing them in the deep end of the pool with you. And so I think your point is an astute one, Laura, because if you're knowledgeable and you're wondering about some of these terms, you can imagine what some of the jurors are thinking. What the heck's a margin? Like where was that even? And so I think that could be a danger for them. But I do think that the defense did use this analogy or metaphor, whatever it is, about building a plane while it's flying, which is somewhat common defense theme for financial cases. And I thought that I'm sure we're going to hear that again. But I would tell you what, right now, the prosecutors love when defense lawyers use those kind of metaphors because they will slam them, in my opinion, in the close with that.
Oh,
and they will talk about the plane and how, they love that. That's always a danger. I don't like using analogies or metaphors and things like that in the opening of the defense lawyer. I always worry that it will get turned on me because I've seen it and I've done it when I was a prosecutor and I've seen it happen on both sides. So you got to be very careful in your opening because you will comment on someone's opening at the close. You will say, if you're done, remember when they told you this, this, and this? And I'm going to tell you right now, those three things didn't happen, or you heard this and it's different. And the government will do the same thing. Remember when that defense lawyer got up and told you this? And we talked about that plane? Well, guess what? I'm going to talk to you about a plane right now.
So let's talk about the government's first witness, who was a trader on, or I should say customer on FTX, Marc-Antoine Julliard. Why do you think, and he had lost, by the way, I think in another episode, I said $140,000. It turned out it was $100,000. He had initially put $140,000 there. So he apparently lost $100,000 on FTX. Why do you think they chose him as their first witness?
I personally think that the significance of his testimony was to focus on the period in November of 2022 when, let's say, the likelihood that Bankman-Fried knew there weren't enough assets at FTX to cover withdrawals and the Alameda situation had really come to a head. They're days away from filing for bankruptcy. And yet he's saying on Twitter, our competitors are trying to hurt us. It's not true. We have enough assets to cover everything. We've always taken safe. So at that moment in time, that is the hardest statement. That's the tweet that gets deleted, I believe, as well. That is the hardest statement for the defense to defend, to explain why that would have been okay, reasonable, or in good faith. That is the toughest one. It's the most likely to be established as a lie. And this particular customer actually read it, remembers it, and can introduce it. I think that's why they picked him.
Interesting. And what about you, Brian?
Well, they mentioned there were two types of people who lost money here, retail customers and institutional. And So it's not surprising they're trying to put a human face on both right away. When you present a financial fraud case, you're going to want to put the victims up, or at least people who are in the buckets of victims, because you can't put every victim up here or everyone who lost money, because there's, whatever, reported over 1 million people, right? So I don't think that's surprising. I think that was pretty expected, is to put those people up and show what people were seeing and hearing, and then go right into those cooperators, go right into, or the insiders, which is where they are now. They're just doing a series of insiders.
And what about the cross-examination of Marc-Antoine Julliard? Well, first of all, what do you feel the defense tried to do in its cross-examination, and were they effective?
Although I thought the defense opening was excellent, one of the best, and frankly better than the government's opening in many ways, I think that this cross and most of the crosses have been pretty ineffectual so far. So I think what they were trying to do, and I think I talked about this the last time I was on, is sometimes there are affirmative facts, very basic facts, that the defense wants to make sure they can use in closing. And they want to have the option of not calling Sam Bankman-Fried or other, they want to have the option of not putting on a defense case. So I think some of what they were doing was just getting some very basic information in a format they like that they could use in closing. And then part of it is normalizing things. So you heard questions like, you would expect a CEO to do ads, right? You would expect a Formula One ad. You would expect, and you didn't invest because of a Formula One ad, right? So they're trying to just sort of, there are these atmospherics that the government has painted, like Sam Bankman-Fried made all this money, high flying. That is sort of negative in the jury's mind. It's not really like a basis to convict, but it paints him in a certain light as a greedy monster who was, trying to get power and become very influential, and it's all a lie. And they're trying to sort of take the sting out of some of those atmospherics. And Judge Kaplan, although that stuff is really important to the jury dynamic, Judge Kaplan has no patience for it because he doesn't see how it affects the bottom line elements of each crime. And he starts cutting off the defense pretty quickly.
And that can be a problem when the judge sustains too many objections or doesn't let the defense do a robust cross. I mean, there is an element, of course, if the defense loses, and I think that's to be expected, they're going to appeal. And I think, part of any defense case, no matter what you think your odds are, is thinking about what record you want to have if you need it for appeal. I've seen appeals where if a judge cuts the defense off too much and you sort of take the totality at the end of the trial, one of their arguments is, hey, we weren't allowed to put our case in. The judge kept cutting us off. And they point to I've seen studies done of there were 200 objections and 197 of them were sustained by the government, so that kind of thing, let's see how this trial plays out. There's a lot more to go here, but, Judge Kaplan's impatient now. I don't think he's going to grow more patient as this trial goes on week after week after week.
I think there were a lot of missed opportunities in this cross, in a lot of the crosses. So I think one thing, and I'd love to get Brian's take on this because I know he's tried many cases on both sides for the government and for the defense. I think one thing that the defense needs to do here is convince the jury that there's no way to convict without the cooperators, to set up the arguments that we expect they'll make that the cooperators aren't credible. And so I think they missed opportunities on the lay witnesses, Mr. Julian and the witness from Paradigm, to sort of establish that you don't know enough to establish the elements of the crime here, right? You don't know this tweet the government showed you. Do you know what Sam was thinking when he said it? Do you know if it was not true? Have you ever seen the internal ledgers? Do you have any, do you know whether that was a false statement? And just sort of pin down that there's these witnesses here and there that the government calls almost as palate cleansers between the cooperators. They don't move the needle. The bottom line is the witnesses who may have an incentive to lie.
So, one question is, if the government were to try to say that, or sorry, not the government, the defense, if they were to try to say, oh, you don't really know if Sam was lying in his tweet, isn't it obvious that he did? Because the tweet said, assets are fine, your assets are safe. And then he has never gotten the money back. So isn't that why they're not doing that? Or,
well, it may be just because it's not true doesn't mean Bankman-Fried knew it was not true, right? So, for example, suppose Bankman-Fried, for whatever reason, was told, let's say Carolyn or Gary or Nishad said to him, don't worry, it's fine. We talked to the accountants, there's enough. We got a new investment, whatever it is. Now, whether that was true or not, it's not enough that the statement be provable as incorrect. He has to believe and know that it's not true. And so there's that extra step along the way.
I see. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to Adam Yedidia, who, I mean, his testimony was, I felt, very strong. What were your top takeaways from reading his testimony?
I think with these next witnesses, the insiders, this is a real problem for the defense. I think that, you're getting right into the peeking behind the curtain, seeing what's happened there. They're telling you what they say and what they saw and what they did. And they're just going to be a number of them in a row. So they started with a smaller one, I think, to build to the credibility of each one as they go along, right? They do Yedidia first, then they do Wang, and now they're getting to Ellison. So I think that's intentional. It's like putting these stones in place to build it up, this foundation. And so I think that's a smart strategy on the government's part. And I think, the fact that he had immunity, I don't know how much jurors really care about that. I think the defense will make a big deal about it. They always do. I would if I were a defense lawyer. But ultimately, if they think this guy's telling the truth, they don't care if he got immunity or not. He comes across as credible. And again, this is one thing where you really need to be in the courtroom, because I think Sam will agree. You can read a transcript and someone can sound very convincing, but if you're there and you see them and they're looking down while they're answering, or they're like not making eye contact, there's all these ways we read credibility that actually in the jury instruction they'll get later, or tone of voice. So, I think a lot's going to depend on what those jurors are seeing and hearing in the courtroom that's hard to really understand if you're not there and just reading a transcript. But
yeah, so I will actually tell you what Adam Yedidia's demeanor was, but first we're going to take a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible. The game has changed. The Google Cloud or thinking or something. I don't remember if that was the exact thing, but it was like he wanted to be very specific about everything and make sure everything he was saying was accurate. And so it was just interesting. I mean, he seemed also super young. They, a lot of them seemed quite young. So let's actually talk about the one thing about his testimony that both the prosecution, then the defense revisited, and then the prosecution revisited again. And it was the conversation on the paddle tennis courts. So paddle apparently is like some game with like Spanish or Mexican origins or something. I feel like I keep seeing it misspelled because people don't understand. It's not like the way we would write paddle in English, but it's like a Spanish thing. Anyway, okay. So in this conversation, Adam had found out that there was $8 billion, this million billion, everybody keeps always being like, what did you say, million or billion? There was $8 billion that Alameda owed to FTX. And this conversation happened in, I think it was June of 2022. And so he said something to Sam, mentioned this and then said something like, are we okay? And Sam replied, we were bulletproof last year. We're not bulletproof this year. What was your take on like why they kept going back to this conversation? And what do you feel it was that the prosecution got across by, relaying this anecdote and what the defense was able to get across?
I would say there were a couple key points of Adam Yedida's testimony. This is one of them. And the purpose of that particular anecdote was to establish knowledge. Okay. If Sam Bankman-Fried is saying from his own lips in June of 2022, which is several months before the tweet, the witness before described where he says we have enough money, is saying we're not bulletproof. And I believe the rest of what he said in that conversation was it could be months to years before we're bulletproof again. 6 months to
3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So the government, we haven't heard yet, what does it mean when he says not bulletproof? But you can expect they'll argue in closing, or maybe other witnesses will elaborate on this. Bulletproof may be a reference to we don't have enough to cover the withdrawals, right? The other thing, and that I think that's why it's so important. And as Brian's telling you, so they bring Yedida out to do several things, right? First, they have him introduce the cast of characters. All right. So like before Brian Klein, one of the greatest trial lawyers for crypto in America, takes the stage, you don't have him just take the stage cold. Somebody says, let me introduce you to Brian Klein, right? So they're using Yedida as an introductory witness to tell everybody about the relationships. You've got Sam, you've got Gary, you've got Nishad, you have Caroline. That wasn't, those names did not come out in the government opening, so they need to acclimate the jury to that. Then you've got this very important pivotal conversation about the paddle tennis court conversation, not bulletproof. And you notice the prosecutors in an ideal world, they would have this written, okay? There would be an email or something in writing that they can point the jury to and there's no dispute it happened. This is somebody remembering something. Memory is frail. So what they try to do is what we defense lawyers sometimes call oak tree corroboration. They try to do things to make it seem more credible by building, like, here's a photo of where it happened. This is where
Which
I
they
was
did.
standing.
Yes, they
Right.
showed a photo of the paddle tennis courts, and then they said, where did you have this conversation? And it was like, oh, Sam was under this hut in between these two courts. It was very specific.
So they're trying to create the impression that even though this wasn't written in stone, it's written in his memory in stone, and they want the jury to remember it with the photo and the association. There were a couple other things that he talked about, which one thing that is going to be significant is Yedida mentioned that Bankman-Fried instructed everybody at FTX to communicate in Signal, to have auto delete. And he said that the reason that they wanted auto delete was because it would look bad if regulators saw the communications. Not a helpful fact for the defense, very helpful for the government to argue consciousness of guilt. And then on cross, I do think, I thought there were two very important points that the defense made on cross. So one of them has to do with this idea that when you deposit money to FTX, it's actually going to Alameda in an account at North Dimension Bank within Silvergate Bank. Okay, this is a very important fact for whether or not customers were misled. And let me just, if I can just go to the transcript here, this is at page 23 6.5, I think, of the transcript. What the defense got on cross was that customers were told that their deposits for FTX would go to North Dimension in the wire instructions. Okay, this is in the testimony on cross, and it was something the defense mentioned in the openings. So you see, you've got a problem here, a hole in the government's theory. If this is a fraud, that the money can go to FTX, how do we reconcile that with the fact that customers were notified? It was disclosed to them in the form of these wiring instructions. Now, is that enough? Did the customers appreciate it? But it's different than saying there was absolutely no disclosure. The other thing they did on cross, which I think we should get Brian's take on, is the defense did a pretty standard thing where they talk about you're getting immunity, who decides whether you're lying or not, how many times did you meet with the government. Brian, what's the significance of that? Why is the defense doing that?
Well, it is standard. And they're just trying to give an alternate reason why this person might shade their testimony or tell things in a certain way. So if they close, they can say, look, everyone who's pointed the finger at Sam, and not Sam Enzer, but SBF, they all cut deals with the government. They all, have reasons to lie. That's what the defense is going to say at the end. And they said it in their opening. They laid out this theory. And so that's very standard, is to get the jury from the defense perspective to understand the deal the person's cut and how many times they've met and all these things. The government usually elicits that in the direct too, just because they want to blunt that blow. They want to say, hey, you're testifying here today, but you have an agreement, right? And what is that? They blunt that blow a little bit, but the defense really wants to harp on it and make it a big deal. And that's very standard.
One thing that I can't remember if this was Adam Yedidia's testimony or if it was Gary's, but I think it was Adam's. When the defense was cross-examining, they kept asking about this. But the funny thing was they kept saying, who is it that decides whether you actually get this immunity? Is it the prosecutors or like who does the evaluation? And he kept saying, well, I don't know who actually does it. So it's just so funny because they asked multiple times, but he really didn't know the answer, so he couldn't. And anyway, I felt it was one of those points where, again, he's just being so honest and making sure it's like literally as he was instructed, just the truth and what he knows. But since he didn't actually know, he couldn't really respond the way I think they wanted him to.
That's a critical component of setting up the impeachment of a cooperator or somebody with immunity. And I think what you saw there was what happens when a defense lawyer doesn't execute the question properly. They need to ask foundational questions that are simple for the witness to lock it in. And I think my friend who was doing that cross, Chris Everdale, he and I were prosecutors together at SDNY. We worked together on the defense side, very good lawyer. For whatever reason, he tried to jump to the ultimate question without taking the methodical, do it step by step to lock the witness into that. And as a result, he kind of lost the opportunity to make that argument. Well, he doesn't have the testimony he needs to make that argument, but I'm sure he'll be able to establish it later.
And remind me, was it Yedidia that he had that? Oh, okay.
And if it's helpful, I found so it's page 235 of the transcript, and this is what I was referring to. And it says, Everdale is asking witnesses, asking questions of Yedidia, and he says, customers also were aware that their money was going to North Dimension bank account, right? Answer, yes. Question, this is a 236. Okay, because that was on the wire instructions that they were given, right? Answer, yes. And when they did make their deposits, they got a credit on their FTX account, right? Answer, yes. So this is clearly going to be one of the arguments the defense makes. There was no fraud. We disclosed it. This part of the government told you in their opening statement is a promise, members of the jury. They told you, they promised that the evidence will show what we say. Okay, they made a promise to you that there was a lie about customers' money going to Alameda and this bank account. Well, that promise they made is not true.
I know, but I'm pretty sure when the prosecution went back, I think she said, was it ever disclosed to customers that Alameda was the ultimate owner of that bank account, and that North Dimension was owned by Alameda, and that was not. So I think
right.
I think she was able
Laura
to.
Shin for the government.
No, I'm not. I'm just pointing out that event that later, I was in the courtroom, so I just remember like, oh yeah, she went back and
No, you're right.
went over that point again.
And this will be the debate, right? Is it enough to set, like, does the fact that it's going to this other bank account put them on notice that it's actually Alameda? We'll see. And I don't know if there are other pieces of this puzzle that are going to connect North Dimension to Alameda in the minds of customers.
Okay.
It's going to be, we're going to hear though from these insiders who are all going to say, Sam knew and we were defrauding people, right? I mean, this is we haven't heard from Carolyn yet, and we're going to hear from others. I think as this plays out, the government, Sam Enzer was raising a good point. The defense is trying to take these issues and elicit testimony that's helpful. And of course, the government's, they're sitting there, right, at the same time listening, and they know what they're trying to do, and they're preparing that. And they're going to presumably work with their witnesses coming forward and elicit questions and try to close off this area of attack. So I think there will be a dynamic, as Sam's saying here, back and forth during this trial and then close about this. But I think, the real headwind here for the defense is going to be what these people inside say, how they describe what happened.
Yeah, well, actually, this reminds me of one emotional moment, I guess you would say, with the Adam Yedidia testimony, which is that the prosecutor said, okay, so in the summer of 2022, you believed in FTX. And even as it started to implode, you sent Sam a signal message saying, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. Don't worry. But you resigned a few days later and, you no longer believed in FTX. What changed your mind? And his response was, well, FTX defrauded all of its customers.
That's devastating testimony. You're going to see that in quotes in the close from the government.
Well, the thing is that right at that moment, though, like everyone was a little bit like, I can't remember what happened. Maybe the defense tried to make an objection, or I don't remember. But Danielle Sassoon, the prosecutor, she immediately was like, I didn't know he was going to respond that way, but she agreed to have it stricken from the record. So what does that mean? Because it's in the transcript. But what does that mean that it was stricken from the record?
That's right. It was stricken, so they can't use it in the close. But it's a legal conclusion, I guess. You're drawing the ultimate conclusion. I'm guessing why the objection was. I haven't read the transcript, that part of it. Sam, do you know what the objection was?
I don't remember the specific objection, but basically, if it's stricken, it means as Brian is telling you, it means the government can't, neither side can quote to it, and the jury's supposed to disregard it. However, the bell cannot be unrung. Okay. That is something that the jurors will remember. They're not supposed to rely on it. They're not supposed to talk about it when they deliberate. And they'll be reminded of that in the jury charge at the end of the trial after closings when they're told the rules for how to deliberate. But nonetheless, how can you forget that?
Yeah, because also, if I remember correctly, I think that was so what is it called when the prosecution goes back after the cross-examination? What's
redirect.
That? Oh, okay. So I'm pretty sure that's how the redirect ended. So it's like,
if you remember it, the jurors remember it.
Yeah. And if you, to Sam's point, having something, you can't unring the bell. And I'm sure the judge will instruct them that any stricken testimony they can't consider, and, et cetera, et cetera. But that's going to be there in their memory. And, they're going to hear a lot of evidence between now and the end of this trial in 5 or 6 weeks. So maybe there'll be other moments like that. But, you can't unring the bell, really.
All right. So let's briefly talk about the next palate cleanser, which is Matt Huang of Paradigm. I didn't feel there were like a ton of big takeaways necessarily from this. And obviously, Gary Wang was the next witness. So that was a huge one. But did you two have any takeaways from Matt Huang's testimony?
I think he boils down to one sentence, which is Paradigm thought when they were investing that there would be no preferential treatment. That's basically the essence of it, that they relied in making an investment decision on the concept, the representation, that there would be no preferential treatment. It would have been important to them in making a decision to know Alameda was exempt from the liquidation engine at FTX, that they were never told that Alameda could get a negative balance, that these things would have mattered, that would have been, in other words, been material to them as an investor. That's it. That's basically it. But yes, it's a basic thing they need to prove their case. And it's in some ways a palate cleanser before they get to the showstopper, Gary Wang.
Yeah. And just one last bit actually also is they did flag the lack of governance controls and said that it could lead to value leakage. So clearly, the fact that there wasn't a board and things like that, that was another issue that they got to raise and showed that they had, flagged it to FTX, and yet, they invested anyway, which the defense did point out to them. All right, so let's talk about Gary Wang. Oh my God, there's so much to discuss with him. But the very first thing that to me was, and I can't remember if this had gotten reported somewhat previously, but here we had hard proof, like they showed screenshots of the GitHub commits and stuff, that on July 31st, 2019, which is, I believe FTX launched in April 2019. So a mere 3 months in is when they coded this special privilege that Alameda could have a negative balance, basically meaning that it could dip into the money in FTX for its own expenses. And the other thing that, at least in the courtroom, that felt astonishing is they showed a tweet where Sam replied to somebody else who said, hey, what about the fact that you own one of the trading firms that's trading on your exchange? Like, this is a conflict, what are you going to do about that? And his response was that Alameda was just going to be treated like everybody else on FTX. And it was literally tweeted the very same day that they were actually at least, Gary said, at Sam's direction, and they were coding in this special privilege. So that was, for me and other people in the courtroom, a notable thing. What is your reaction to that, and what the prosecution was able to get across generally with their first questioning with him?
That's just devastating evidence, right? That's just, if you're in the jury, if you're in the courtroom, you're feeling that way. The jury, everyone's feeling that, seeing that. So, when you can match something that's actually happening up with someone commenting on it in real time and close together, that's just critical piece of evidence the government's going to rely on later. And I'm sure the jury, saw that and paid attention to it. Sounds like nicely presented to them. So that's a serious, one of the many serious problems that the defense faces here.
Yeah, and I think what's really damning for the defense there is, look at how active it is. Okay, to get the special privilege, they had to actively code it. This is not like an oversight. Okay, this isn't, we're building the plane as we're flying and we forgot a wing. We had to actively do this. We had to code it in affirmatively, and clearly Sam knew about that, according to the testimony, and clearly he knows that what he's saying on the same day that they're coding it is contrary to that. Not helpful for the defense, very powerful for the government.
Yeah, another aspect was this line of credit, which initially, I guess they'd made it just a few $1 million, but I guess Alameda kept bumping up against that. Then they had to make it a few $100 million. And then the funny thing is, at one point in the cross-examination, the defense asked Gary, so did you, so when you brought it up to a number that you felt couldn't be, breached, Gary said, oh, well, do you mean the first time or the second time? Because he was like, the first time I thought, they would never hit $1 billion, but then they did. So then I bumped it up to 65 billion. So that was sort of a funny moment. I'm not getting the phrasing exact there, but again, this was obviously, a poor, I guess we would call this a poor fact for the defense. But what's your take?
That's an understatement. And also 65 billion. Again, put yourself in the place of these jurors. Like, these are incredible amounts of money for anybody, right? And these are eye-opening amounts of money. Like, if it was 300,000 or something, people are like, okay, a line of credit, I get it with my house. These are numbers people can relate to. But when you're talking $65 billion, really nobody can relate to that. Okay, that's just it was an incredible amount of money. So that's just a devastating fact for the defense. I don't know how they're gonna try to spin that, but that's a very devastating fact.
Yeah, and I agree with Brian completely. And also, one of the things the defense did in the opening was they said, well, they tried to weave this, they planted a seed that the reason Bankman-Fried could believe that this was reasonable, that it was okay for Alameda to borrow customer funds, is that he reasonably believed there was enough collateral, okay? That Alameda was putting up some kind of collateral, and this is a normal thing that happens, right? There's margin trading. It's okay. You give me collateral, I loan you money, no problem. $8 billion. Where is the collateral for $8 billion of customer money? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of customer money. Where is the collateral for? What is the collateral to secure customers? How is that safe?
I think what the other interesting part, Gary's, a quote co-founder of the company, and he's the ultimate insider here too. And when you're talking about code, what's interesting is that's something that this is not like a conversation on a court, right? This is like literally code is there, and the defense can't, I don't think, dispute that the code has that written into it or are going to, because it won't be credible. So this is just sort of very devastating.
Yeah, something that was sort of interesting just about, being there and taking in the whole testimony. There was like a long explication period where they had to talk about what a line of credit was. They had to explain how this got coded in. This allow underscore negative was the name of the code function. They had to explain, how margin was an actual thing you could do on the platform, but how this was different. I mean, it just felt like there was just a lot of like, okay, we're, putting this bucket here, this is what Alameda could do. These were the other buckets available on the platform, but these were, they had rules like around liquidation and like if your balance went below this amount, and those rules were put in place to keep FTX and its customers from losing money. And so there was just like a lot. And then at the very end, it just felt like there was a lot where finally kind of all the meat came out. But yeah, they said a long time kind of setting it up. And because it was a little complex, I did wonder how well this was landing with the jury.
The jury's going to remember 65 billion. I mean, that's just, they might not remember the details of all that in the lead up, but they're going to remember, I think, hey, there was a special coded permission no one else had, and Alameda could lose up to, or, be negative up to 65 billion, right?
Right. And we're talking about, Laura, you're talking about like the meat of the testimony, but you have to remember, right? The government at the very beginning of Gary's testimony, I'll just read from the transcript. After Gary introduces himself and says he's a co-founder and the CTO of FTX, he's asked, did you commit financial crimes while working at FTX? Yes. What types of crimes did you commit? Wire fraud, securities fraud, commodities fraud. Did you commit these crimes by yourself or with other people? With other people. Who were the main people you committed the crimes with? Sam Bankman-Fried, Nishad Singh, Caroline Ellison. Do you see any of the people you committed those crimes with in this courtroom today? Can you stand up? And he points at Sam Bankman-Fried, right? In general terms, Mr. Wang, what did you do with the defendant that was wire fraud? We gave special privileges to Alameda Research on FTX, which allowed it to withdraw unlimited amounts of funds from the platform, and we lied about this to the public. When you say withdrew unlimited funds from the platform, what were you referring to? It had the ability to, regardless of what was in the account, to withdraw unlimited amounts of money. So, like, even if the jury gets lost in the weeds of all this other stuff, which the government, they have to lay the foundation in the transcript so that they can argue it in closing. And then in closing, they will take what they need and explain it again in a way that will be usable for the jury. They just have to have the building blocks in the record. Well, even if the jury doesn't follow the middle, they just heard a guy say, I committed crimes with this guy right here, and here's the gist of the crime.
Yeah, and I have to say, in the courtroom, because you're right, that statement was made in the first minute or two that he took the stand. I remember being like, whoa.
It's a shock and awe strategy on prosecutors. They like to just throw you right in it, so you're just like, whoa. And then it's like, this guy just admitted he committed all these crimes. It just layers his credibility onto everything he says. And he's the co-founder. It's like, this is like, it's just, you're like, how much more do I mean, on some level, jurors might be thinking, like, how much more do I need to hear in this trial? Why are we here? I'm sure some of them wouldn't surprise me, thought, like, why are we here for another 5 weeks? But there's a lot more to come, but
One other thing about the credibility, and this goes back to what we were saying about Adam Yedidia, about how it was clear he was making an effort to make sure everything he said was fully accurate. When Gary was asked to identify Sam, he couldn't really see him. So that's why they asked him to stand, because he kept going like this, like he was like looking. And so finally he had to kind of stand up, because it took him and it still took him a long time. It was like an awkward silence while he tried to find Sam in the courtroom. So the fact that he made that much effort to make sure that he actually saw Sam, I don't know, it sort of said something to me.
Well, he's an engineer too, and engineers are very precise people, right? Software engineers, other types of engineers. So you did, I believe, this too. So like, these are not surprising traits for those kinds of people, right?
That makes sense.
If you read Trading Stereotypes, maybe like a salesperson would be like, oh, he's over there. Right? Like, I know he's over there at that table. But, an
no
engineer,
offense to any salespeople listening to the show. So let's now talk about the defense, because I've been reporting a little bit, like on my Twitter and some of these short recaps that I'm releasing on the podcast every day. But one of the really notable things to me is that the defense seems to be irritating Judge Kaplan. I frankly sort of, I don't know if agree is quite the right word, but let's just put it this way. I believe it was Marc-Antoine Julliard, and then Matt Huang, like Adam Yedidia, Matt Huang, like pretty much like all the witnesses. Whenever they do their cross-examination, there will be sometimes multiple times throughout the questioning a section where they just ask super basic questions that have already been covered, that are not even like anything complicated. Like I remember for Gary Wang, he said, you met Sam at math camp in high school. Like, why are you repeating that? We don't care. It's not important. Things like that. Like, he even asked him, how many people were at, it was either FTX or Alameda when you started there and started working there. And because he's the co-founder, he was like, it was me and Sam. And so it was just, there were things like that. But early on, when he had done this with Marc-Antoine Julliard, because it was the first time, Judge Kaplan kind of didn't say anything for a while. But then, he finally said, like, hey, can you stop it with these repetitive questions? And when he did, I remember thinking, oh, thank God. Like, I was kind of getting a little bit like, I was wondering, like, why are we wasting all this time just covering this ground we've already covered? But he keeps, that team keeps doing it. And Judge Kaplan keeps having to say something about it. And so you'll notice, like, even in the transcript, one of the times he said something like, what about, let's not keep repeating, did you not understand? Or some phrase like that, what about that was obscure? So I was curious what you thought about, first of all, why it is that they keep doing that. Like, let's just start with that. Why do you think they're doing that?
I'll let Sam answer, because Sam has had a lot.
A good question is, how do I get started trading? A better question is, how do I profit today?
And then I think someone got closed. Or I've heard of someone
else
else getting
closed
closed.
also,
yeah. And then they said that person wasn't trading with the right strategies, and they cut him down.
I know a couple of people that texted me when I first started having problems with them, and they texted me. I was like, I had 1.6 million in funding, and then just send me back to the 400K.
Yeah.
And that's not fair, is it? If you advertise something, why not just let the traders trade? And if you think about it, it's just fishy, right? Everything that happens is fishy. Same thing happened to me when I got close to the max funded. Obviously, as you said, some firms, you go through a lot of challenges to get that. So I did go through a lot of challenges. Of course, the capital was a lot. It was a big jump. And once I got the funding out, I started trading on them, started making payouts. I was above the break-even point, making profits. And that's when they basically stopped allowing me to get any accounts without telling me that. So they banned me in the back end, but on the front end, they asked me to come to interview. They asked me to post payouts. They asked me all of that. And in the back end, I was actually banned. And they will keep saying there's payment issues, stuff like that. And I can't go more capital.
What are your thoughts on that, though? So when obviously, they're asking you for payout, asking you for interview, but then they're banning you.
It's just a scam, bro. It's just a scam because before the interview, my payout was coming in 30 minutes. I was requesting the payout 30 minutes later. I had the money. After the interview, I was waiting 2-3 days. No more answering to my messages, and all of that. So obviously, I was just marketing for them, and that's the case for other traders I had an interview with them. Just marketing, and after that, they just throw you on the other side.
It's strange. I feel like it's strange because it's like, in my opinion, the best asset to evaluation firms, any of these evaluation firms, is obviously having profitable traders. I think the reason why FTMO is so popular and done what it's done is because it's always paid its traders. And then therefore we're seeing a common theme more recently where, don't get me wrong, there are traders who cheat. There are traders who actually cheat and they use actual, bad strategies to try and game the system. But I believe like the one that you're explaining, I know there's others who use it similar as well, and I believe that's not the case, right? At the end of the day, that they have to be able to, it's not someone, it's a strategy in itself to be able to handle that level of risk, to see those sort of numbers on challenges, to invest into that many challenges, to be willing to lose that many challenges, or some people you might not lose, you might actually win the first one.
You can just buy the first account and pass them.
As you've seen with Bespoke, obviously it took a long,
it was just a losing streak, right? So
and then, but having to go through that is not easy. That's an edge in itself. So I don't, in my opinion, I think that that's something that shouldn't be seen as bad. You could say it's gambling, okay, fair, but trading itself is almost gambling anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you've got an edge to that, it's not gambling at the end of the day, right? It's playing this longer term vision that most people just don't have.
Exactly.
So I find it very bizarre that these companies would want to do that. I know, obviously, I guess it runs the risk of, well, I guess it doesn't, because if you're using proper risk management on the funded account, then there's not a risk of then like huge profits being made.
No.
So I don't know. I don't understand it.
I wasn't even going above 3%, 4% profit. So funding account was just under 2-3%. So it was smaller payouts. But yeah, it was very, very weird because again, they basically, I think they figured out what I was doing in terms of my long-term plan, because obviously the thing that I talked about is long-term, 6 months, 12 months. So going through the losses at first and then getting the funding accounts and start to make money.
What was their reason for banning you then? So you said they found out what you're doing, but again, what you're doing doesn't go against the rules as far as I know.
No.
So how did they ban you? What was
the
thing that they said? You're banned for this.
They didn't say anything. Like I told you, I had the funded accounts, and then I couldn't purchase anymore. So I had, I think, 300-400 accounts. I wanted to get 2 more to get to that 2 million mark. Just couldn't purchase, right? I couldn't use credit, nothing, due to payment processing issues. That's what they are saying. And I was like, okay, let me just send you crypto. You issue the account. No answer, right? So, after traded that, had again a few losing trades, a losing streak, kind of lost the accounts.
Oh, okay, and then you couldn't buy more.
Yeah, exactly, and I couldn't buy more. I was like, okay, just made my math up, was profitable. And then, basically what happened, my wife signed up to trade because obviously, if I know the rules, platform rules, like I read them. If 2 people are in the same, you can confirm this. If 2 people are in the same house, right, same IP, maybe same device or different devices, right? It doesn't really matter as long as they're not trading at the same time. They're not using the same trades, same risk, all of that, same credit card, same payouts.
Yeah.
Isn't it all right?
Rules. Yeah.
Right? As long as the max capital isn't reached. I know a lot of platforms have those rules.
Yeah, so it's like max capital on strategies, I believe, is the way they describe it. So then, therefore, let's say if 2 of you had, even if you had 400k each on FTMO, it's had the same strategy, then they'll ban you.
Yeah, obviously. But me being funded in all these companies, I wasn't really going down that route, right?
Exactly. So what you're saying is your wife got funded with them, but you weren't trading with them anymore.
Exactly. So that's perfectly fine, isn't it? Right? Different everything.
According to their rules, I know they try and argue. I know that they're trying to insinuate that you're trading.
Yeah, but how can you prove that? Right? I wasn't really touching the device. Yeah, sure. I have a few phones at home that I use MetaTrader on. Of course, one was used maybe for a funded account, but I wasn't trading on them at that time. I wasn't really funded. I think I lost the accounts at some point. So I wasn't really using that. I wasn't trading at that time. So she was trading. And why isn't that okay, right? Just how can you prove Because if I'm trading EURUSD and I'm placing a buy, right? You're trading EURUSD, maybe you see the same setup. If you take it, what does that mean? Like, we can make profit at the same time.
Well, the thing is, I would imagine I see their point if you both have an account at the same time.
No, there was no account at the same time.
One account, then
I think at some 2 weeks, 3 weeks period, we had the same accounts, but was not even trading the same day. I was trading maybe Monday, she was trading Wednesday or Friday. So how can you say that? So according to the rules and everything, there was no point in banning. And after a few payouts, everything going well, I kind of contacted their team again, and I was like, all right, I kind of want to get funded again, right? But again, respect the max capital.
Yeah.
So and that's when they told me, oh, you were soft banned from our from the risk, all of that, but
So
we can fix that. Yeah, after almost 2 months, and they said, we can fix that. So they fixed it. I purchased 2 accounts to have that max capital, and after I passed one of them, I was trading the other challenge, so I was expecting a funding account. That's when I woke up one day right before a few payouts from my wife, and everything was gone, right?
Oh, so they banned both?
I think so. I didn't receive any email, but just I don't know how these companies operate, bro. You don't even get an official email. You just go on Twitter and you see it. Like, how does that work, right? Twitter is not companies support team, right?
We're going to be hosting a very special event. We're calling it Retire with Real Estate. Now, it's not just so that you
So it's just a weird situation, and obviously there was some, not gonna say agenda, but they were looking into it, because if you think about it, this prop firms risk management, because you get like information from the risk department and everything like that. They say all this stuff that you're a bad actor, that due to too much risk exposure to the company for the benefit of other traders, you know how governments used to say, for your own safety and the others, just stay inside. It's the same thing, right? They use this tactic to manipulate your thinking. So, I mean, what was the bridge there? Didn't do anything wrong. The rules were respected, and started going hard on them on Twitter, because I know when I'm wrong. When I'm wrong, I did something wrong, I'm just not gonna take part of it. But I wasn't wrong that time. I respected everything, and it just sucks because you go with the rules, and they still decide to go against you.
What are your thoughts in regards to like the whole Twitter space or just social media then, in terms of like these situations? We've seen a good handful of them. So ever since MFF, we've seen more of them.
Yeah.
But even before that, we've seen them, of course, with like Noman, for example.
Yeah, that was
with
a
the
big
same
one,
companies as well. And again, it's like, obviously we know these companies do pay out, because other people have been paid out, you've been paid out.
Yeah, no problems.
So what are your thoughts in regards to like the whole social media aspect? Because as you said, like you try and speak to support, but then you get a faster response somehow on social media. So is that, because I know like on their side, like the company side, they say, these influencers try to use their influence to target us and stuff like that. And but then on your side, is it a case where you feel like you don't get respected or don't get the responses in a timely manner when you're trying to go the private route?
Many independent traders around the world have great strategies, but no access to capital. Fundraising might not be your game. However, DarwinX, a UK and EU regulated broker and asset manager, has been providing a solution for this since 2012, a path towards investor capital on merit. The mantra is act like a hedge fund manager and you'll become one. Just trade your best and focus on building a track record attractive to future investors. The more investable your track record progresses, the more performance fees DarwinX pays you. You participate in the DarwinX Virtual Capital Program, Darwin IA, and every month receive fees from the benefits you generate on those allocations and on external investor capital. You can do all of this by trading on a DarwinX live account if you have the confidence and the capital, or via a DarwinX Zero account without risk and for just €38 a month via a virtual account if you're not ready yet. Join DarwinX today and be a professional trader. Save €20 signing up to DarwinX using the special code RISDOM20. The link is in the description below. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get an answer, and nobody assists you, and you send emails, no answer. And of course you go on social media, because if this company scams people, and I'm not really big on social media, but I have an audience. If they do that to me, then I'm pretty sure they do it to other people. And I've received a lot of messages from people with 5 followers, 10 followers, showing me like rejected payouts and all of that. And nobody sees those people. So that's why you go social media, you put some pressure on. I did put quite a lot of pressure on them, but again, no answer. Just same thing that they try. And again, how can you call yourself a big company if you're the CEO, right? You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and you just stalk people on social media and post stuff about them. Because come on, bro. If you run a $1 million company, you go talk about my wife that she's in university and she can't trade. What is that? How can you say that? It just doesn't make any sense, right? Twitter is Twitter. It's not. If you're a big company, just be a company, right? Not just go on social media and rant about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's bizarre, and especially like with the situation you're facing there.
Yeah.
Because as I said, like, to say, you can assume, that's fine. You could say like, you're probably trading, right? They could say that, but like, you'd really need to be able to prove it.
Yeah, there was no proof.
The aspect of that is that you would both need to have an account at the same time and breach like the max capital rules, etc.
Or have the
for
same
that
trades.
to really be an issue.
Exactly, but the only thing they said was just, oh yeah, the AP matches and some device ID matches, because it was one phone that I used before wasn't using it anymore. Because come on, like, how can that be a rule? Let's say I have an iPhone, right? I use it for trading, and then I sell it to someone, and that guy gets it and trades. Is he gonna get banned?
Yeah, no, that's right. But what I would say is, at that time, did you have any notification that you were banned, as in you were banned?
No.
So at that time, you just didn't have any accounts. She had an account. You had the same device, so that's not an issue because.
But I wasn't using that device. Yeah, I wasn't using that device. No.
No, what I mean is, as long as you don't have an account at the same time.
Yeah. Obviously, to the rules. Yeah. That's the point, right? Because if I have,
it shouldn't be an issue then.
Because if I had trading on my phone, I had my fund accounts. Her fund accounts. I was just switching around them and trading. Yeah, of course, that's a breach, right? That's not allowed. But that wasn't the case. And same IP thing, right? Of course, if you're living in the same house, you're going to have the same IP, right? But if you're not trading at the same time, you're not breaching the max allowance. Because I know those rules, FTMO and all of that. The big companies have those rules. So there was there was nothing.
So we had an interesting one at SFT where there was 2 friends.
Oh yeah.
They flagged up on the, their payouts were coming. They flagged up because they had same IP and then they had a same device address at one time. So then they reached out to me. I spoke to them. We looked into it. And a lot of people do trade. Like, not a lot of people don't obviously have friends who trade, but there are occasionally where 2 people have friends and they meet up and they trade and they've been doing it a number of years, and that's what they told us. So we just looked at it and we said, okay,
that's fine.
And all we had to do was, okay, that's fine. You've notified us. We can expect it. They did do. There was, I think, a handful of trades that were on the same device. So we just said to them,
don't use
for whatever reason, don't use the same device again, because that will flag up, and next time we'll probably have to then reject it because we've told you the advice not to do that. And then we just said as well, what was the other thing we said? Oh, we just said, like, obviously if there's like a, say, really large increase in profits and they're shared again in terms of the exact same trades, it might flag up. We're not going to breach you, but we might flag up, so we'll have to look into it then. So
maybe not pay out, right?
Yeah, well, it depends, right? Depends on obviously the actual trades, because people trade together. They trade next to each other. They trade together. Again, it comes down to those rules of strategies on max capital, of course, but they weren't close to that, so that was fine. So then, we let them trade as normal.
That's the difference.
So I think it's case by case, and I do understand as well that as companies get bigger, it does become harder to try and be a bit more personal and a bit more like understanding, not understanding, but like to be able to speak to every person who's in those situations, because there might be a lot of them. But yeah, I think it's a bizarre situation.
You send an email notifying them, maybe provide some explanation, and then continue trading, right? This was a whole different situation because I woke up, all accounts are breached, payouts were pending, so there was around, I think, $17,000.
So were the payouts for your wife?
Yeah.
And then
I didn't have
at the time, were you trying to do challenges?
Yeah. I had 2 challenges and I just passed one. So I had.
Was she max funded or?
No, she just had 3 accounts. 3 accounts. Yeah. So wasn't anything like that. So again, weird, right? You request payouts, wait for 3-4 days, and then after night, you find that, and you go on social media, and the first tweet appears the CEO saying, "Oh, we found this. Would you guess who it is?" and stuff like that. Like
so they started it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was bragging on social media, like, "Oh, I found this, and I banned him." Right? What is there to brag about? Because it just shows the people that you're just actively looking into finding, let's say, dirt on traders to ban them, and that was the case with multiple ones. It's just. You see the difference between your story and what happens. Like you're obviously notified by them, which is a great thing, but you try to solve to come to a resolution with them. In this case, it was just bragging about, "Oh, we found this, we found that on social media that she's your girlfriend or wife or whatever." Like, how can you know that? It's just we don't share the same name yet, so how do you know we are right? Because obviously flagged, and then you start looking on social media and you find a picture with us, and then you ban her. That's the reason for banning. Like, come on.
It's bizarre, yeah. And what would you say, like, in regards to like the company obviously putting your figures out there, you know, in terms of like how much you'd paid and how much you profit?
Stats that he shared. First of all, those are not real. So I did my own math. Doesn't come close to that. Obviously, there was a big amount of spending, 30 something, but the profit was 40 something. So it wasn't, I think he said like a 7K difference. It was a bit more. I can't remember. I think I made it up. It was $15,000 profit overall. But again, that happened because I had a losing streak. I got the fund accounts and I just started trading on them. So 2 or 3 months, I could have just continued. And at the end of the year, I'm sure I've been a lot more profit. Because that happens to, that's just how the system works, right? And again, about the situation, I texted other platform owners, the big ones that I'm funded with, and again, I explained the situation, and that's okay, right? That's okay with us.
Yeah, so you actively like communicate.
Exactly.
This is how I'm going about it.
Because some of them book me, so keep chatting with them. We're very happy, no issues. But of course, they can't really go on social media.
Well, I believe, like, you know, with the social media stuff, it has its benefits to be able to engage with the community in a positive way. I guess, you know, I understand from the company's perspective. So, like with the Noman situation and similar.
That was different, wasn't it different?
With his, it was very different, and it'll be interesting when we speak to him to hear like his side in person. But generally, essentially from the company's perspective, I can see what they're trying to do, because the company's fear is people with an influence. You know, using that influence against them is damaging, right? So there is that fear. That's a valid fear. The other fear, though, or the other reason why they would probably go out their way to do it first, is they're trying to control the narrative or try and do damage control. Which, again, as from a business perspective, I
makes
respect.
Sense. I respect.
But how does it actually come off to the community? You know, and I think when it comes to these, you know, the Twitter space, I think companies should stay companies. I think the CEOs can decide to, you know, engage with the community in a positive manner. But I believe, like, at the end of the day, if you're wanting to build a company in the right way, like FTMO, you don't see FTMO ever going out their way. You don't see any, you know, most people don't even know who the CEOs are.
Exactly,
you know? Which can be a positive and a negative, I guess.
Because they're a company.
They're focused on the infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just weird, like texting back and forth on Twitter. We found matching IPs, and I'm like, we live in the same house, and then but device ID, I use that phone. But she's in university, she can't trade. Why are you saying a woman can trade if she's in university, right? Doesn't make sense. But I didn't say that. You're trying to call me that. Like, come on, that's how can you trust a company with a CEO that just goes texting on social media and argues with a trader that they were basically pushing, right? They were praising, right? So it's just, if I was blowing that many accounts and I wasn't a good trader, why do they interview with me, right? Doesn't make sense.
So have you had any sort of backlash in regards to the any other firms out there, or you said they're fine?
Backlash from this one?
From because of the situation, and how public it was.
Not
all
really,
good?
no. All good, obviously, I had problems with other platforms where, let's say, I would get a 500K account. I had one situation with company, 500K account, which was a bit more expensive. Passed it first try, so I didn't really. That way, I traded more conservative, so I was really doing 4%, I was doing 1-2%. Passed it like 2-3 weeks, and then after reviewing them, again I read the rules. One rule said you can risk more than 2%, so I wasn't really risking more than 2%. It was just one trade, phase one account where I risked 2.2%. Right. So after passing phase 1, passed phase 2, was waiting for the live account. They emailed me and said, "Oh, we can't have you because you risked 2.2% on that specific trade," which didn't really make any profit. Right. Was a 2.2% risk, but I just closed it around break even. So rejecting my live account after three weeks of trading. Again, like that doesn't really make sense, does it? Obviously was, let's say, a breach of the rule, but why not just warn me then, or stuff like that? And
or tell you on phase 1, like,
yeah, exactly. And they're saying, "Oh, we can have you."
Do you say that closed break even there?
Which one?
That trade.
Yeah, it was close to a bit of profit. Yeah.
So how would they know that it was?
Maybe based on stop, or no, I'm wrong. That was a stop loss. Yeah, it was. I think it was 1.5%, and I kind of let it breathe a little bit more, and I got stopped out. But again, I passed it. So what's the issue in that, right? And again, same thing. They say we're gonna reset you to phase 1, start all over again. It doesn't really make sense, right? So that's a company I got a lawsuit from. Had to sign an agreement and everything to get my money back, which is insane, right?
Oh, wow.
Get my refund. So there's a lot of companies I had issues with more gain, same stuff. Usually there's companies that offer a big account.
Yeah.
So the other.
That seems to be like a red flag when they offer
exactly.
large accounts and large max
yeah,
funding.
but I found that the wrong way, right? The hard way. There was another company, got the 500K account, passed it, was waiting for the funding, and they said that due to money laundering or stuff like that, Romania, I think you know the situation. Yeah. Romania is in a flagged country, so we can't have you trading the 500K account. We're gonna either refund you or jump you to 100K account. Which again, how does it make does it make sense? You're purchasing an account after you pass it, money laundering. What does that have
money
to
laundering
do?
would only make sense if they were giving you money without you trading.
Yeah, or me paying more accounts. How does that make sense? I already got funded. Why not just give me the funding account, right? And again, these platform companies, they just shove it in your face, right? You either take it or leave it.
So like, due to these situations, though, does it make you want to move away from evaluation companies?
Yeah, definitely. Like, because it's such a waste of also money. Because if you spend money on challenges and then you get funded accounts, and then they say we can have you trading with us, why did you let me purchase accounts? That happened to me with another platform. So I bought 2 accounts, failed them, and then when I tried to go again, they restricted me. They banned me. So I couldn't purchase any more accounts to maybe get funded to get the money back, and I also wasn't given a refund. And I also tried to go the legal route with them. All right, if you're gonna ban me, just refund me the money, right? Even if I lost the challenges, because I can't be trading with us. But they're just didn't have any of it. So yeah, that's the thing. I think when you become a little bit bigger, especially in platform capital, let's say 500K, 1 million is fine. Won't have issues because there's good companies. But once you try to scale it, like I did, go to all these platforms to gain more capital, that's when issues start to rise. So yeah, moving forward, I'm gonna slowly build my track record, just focus again on personal capital. Already have connections for investors and all of that, and I think that's the way to go trading wise, increasing the real capital, because you won't have any problems there with payouts, because that's the thing. It's just added stress, right? The challenge, which all right, you do it my way, you invest money, get the funding account, but then there's also the stress of not being paid out, the stress of having added slippage, which I had in another platform. So I tried them all. Challenge was perfect conditions. You get a live account, you place a 5 lot buy on euros, you get slip 4 pips on entry, and then stop loss 4 more pips. It was 8 pips on the position. But that was fortunately solved, but maybe that was solved because I am like an influential social media, let's say, trader, because obviously they see my name and everything. But maybe again, a trader that isn't popular, maybe they just wouldn't fix the issue. So just a lot of problems finding repertoire, and it's hard to scale up, right?
Yeah, no, definitely, it makes sense. And well, how much have you withdrawn from prop firms in total?
Total since I started with them.
Do you know how much you've spent and how much you withdrawn? Do you know those two?
I know specific stats on certain prop firms, but I don't know overall. Usually, let's call it like a risk to reward, maybe.
Yeah.
Usually, prop firms that I've been trading 6 months and more, my usual risk reward is 1 to 6, 1 to 7.
Okay, so very
so
high.
yeah, bigger companies, let's say, for example, my fund effect spent around 14,000, withdrew around 78,000, something like that. So it's a good ratio, right? Even you lose the account, you can buy a few more challenges, get funded back, and then. But again, it's a long-term game, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and don't really know the exact numbers because I don't really look it, but just trade, right?
Yeah, but
Just
in
trade
terms of risk
internally.
reward, then it would be a case where
That's the
overall
usual.
it's very high risk to reward,
Yeah, usually,
long term.
Yeah, long term, 6
In
months.
the short term, it could look obviously.
Like
quite
was the
bad, or
situation
like
was almost break even.
Okay.
But you have to push it, right?
Do you feel some of the prop firms that you've had issues with, because obviously you'll know which ones they are, but like, would you say some of them are relatively newer or have less of a customer base? So then your sort of payouts or scalability is a bit risky to them, versus say an FTMO type or my Forex funds type, or people in the top, who have very large revenue shares of the industry. Would you say that you're having these issues mainly with people who are sort of maybe on the smaller side?
Didn't really look into that, but mostly newer companies. But there's obviously new companies that just come out and they're prepared.
Yeah, of course.
There've been a few coming up and they just have a very good plan and everything, so you don't have any issues. But I think most of my problems came with companies that aren't that big. Yeah,
for sure. And so moving into like obviously the personal side and moving forward, then what's your focus? Obviously, as you said, is acquiring capital, building that capital, and building that track record. So what's your process going to be like for that?
Just I have a very good friend who's into investment capital.
Was he the one who interviewed you on your channel?
Isar. So he's a very good friend of mine, and he went through that route starting out in trading. And I found it very interesting because there's a lot more opportunities that way, right? And it's also much more easier.
Yeah.
So if I can trade funded capital, I can probably trade investment capital way easier because the targets are lower, right? For the track record, I don't know, he recommended me, which I trust him, 3-5% profit per month is more than enough, right? 6 to 12 month record, just use personal capital, focus on that, because again, if you trade your personal capital, maybe you don't have that much money, let's say 5k, 10k, you don't really make a living from 3-5%, right? But you just think of it long term.
Yeah, it's about the scalability.
Exactly, compared to prop firms where you have more leverage, more capital to risk, and then you can make money from that. So moving forward, I'm just going to use prop firm for just making money. How much I can, keep getting funding at the top companies, and then use that on the side to slowly build a future.
Definitely. In regards to like the strategy then, for example, so obviously on the challenges, you have the particular strategy you use for challenges, right? Higher risk, low risk to reward, and just play the long-term vision with that. Cool. But then when it comes to the funded accounts, and I'm guessing, and you can let me know, but I'm guessing that the strategy you use on funded accounts would be investor accounts. Yeah. Right. So then what does that strategy look like? Are you a scalper? Are you a day trader, swing trader?
Usually day trading. So challenge, as I said, just intraday. Maybe sometimes, let's say a swing trade, because if you're risking 4%, you can have a bigger stop loss.
Yes.
Right? So just look for that reversal or continuation, have that. And for the funded account, my strategy is usually use more risk for even negative risk reward. So maybe I risk 2% to make 1%, right? Because if I know for a fact that trade can go in my way, I'd rather just have a little bit more risk, even a bigger stop loss, and aim just to secure some profits. Because funding companies, that's the wrong thing about it. You just need to secure the next payout, right? So you're not really thinking about the long-term growth.
Yes.
You're just thinking of the next payout, which again is a very wrong way of looking at it, but that's just the thing, right? Because on a personal account or an investor account, maybe have a negative month or negative few weeks, right? But overall, you're still bullish. You're still profitable. But on the on the fund account, you kind of want to secure the next payout. So on the still intraday. So
would you say you have like an entry drill in terms of like it's a specific style of entries or trades? So then therefore it has an edge, if that makes sense. So it's not like
obviously
randomized.
It's not random. Obviously, as I said, my story, I just put my head down in the charts and tried to figure some stuff out. So I did courses, I watched all this information, but it didn't really work for me. So I just found an edge, as I said. It's mostly based around trading times. So now they're called kill zones. London, New York Open, all that kind of stuff. Just a daily 4-hour trend, basic stuff, right? Hero USD, GBP the pairs that most of traders trade, and just focus on catching a winning trade. Have my win rate quite big, and just go from there. I don't think trading is that complicated, to be honest. People who try to complicate it, they usually don't end up being profitable, right?
Yeah, that's
just keep it simple and use proper risk management, and you're going to be profitable in the long run. Right?
And what are your thoughts, though, in regards to the prop firm situation then? So have you not thought about just scaling down the style that you use in terms of passing the challenges, just so you can keep the funding and just, continue to get payouts, even if it's smaller or a bit of a harder route to go down?
Well, obviously now, I mean, if a new prop firm comes, probably I'll just to avoid any problems. But the thing is, with trading low risk in challenges, it requires quite a lot of time. And even if there's no maximum trading days, I'd rather focus on my live accounts, right? And when I had 5.5 million, I had all these accounts. Every day I had a free account, right? Because the way I was doing it is just trade one account one by one.
Yes.
Yeah, so take a trade, get the account profit, wait, get the next account and trade. Obviously, having more accounts gets you in some over trading because you want to make profit all the time. So it's good and bad. But yeah, I probably will scale down on the risk.
Yeah. Do you still do it that way now, like one at a time?
Yeah, with you guys I did the same thing. So I got funded, right? Gonna use the low risk profile now, and other prop firms now I'm not taking any new accounts. Just gonna keep the funding that I have with the reputable companies and go from there.
So withdraw from there. And
because it's just too much risk, right? I try to go to that company again, I pass, maybe I fail a few challenges, pass it, funding denied, or maybe payout denied. You waste all this time, so I'd rather just stick to that and then focus on the.
Do you feel like quite drained going through like all this online drama and back and forth?
I'm a very transparent person, so I might say it has been very tough. I have been on quite a losing streak now because it was my Forex funds first.
Yes.
So I had a 600k account with them. I was spending payouts around again 15-20,000. Was 2 days before the freeze happened. So coming from that, it's quite hard. Tried to get some funding back, maybe lost some challenges, went into some drawdown, had a losing streak. Tough psychology, and then this happened, which was I think last week, and it was just a very, very hard time, let's say. I don't really care about it, but that combined with like personal issues, you're tired, did the events and all of that, so it's very time consuming. Can't really focus on trading, and then you're like, oh shit, now I don't have that funding. I don't have any payout secured. What am I gonna do? I need to build a track record, but that's gonna take 6 to 12 months. So I still need to do this. So it's very hard. Trading is very hard, right? Especially when you have your eggs in different baskets. So that's why my goal forward is just maybe even copy the same trades between the fund accounts. Just try to maintain it very straightforward, and that's because it's very stressful. It's very stressful.
Because equally, like with your strategy on one side, I know people who they might do similar on the challenges, but their strategy or mindset is keep the payouts smaller to avoid being flagged. Not small in terms of like, just a couple thousand or whatever, but
percentage.
I think in terms of like maybe below the 10% mark in terms of profit.
It's quite a lot.
It's quite a lot, yeah. To be fair, it might maybe below 5%, right? But essentially just consistent, smaller amounts, obviously scaled capital, so they've got like a couple million in funding. And then I know one guy who trades them all, right? He trades them all on a copier. Kyle. So he trades them all on a copier. And he'll just go for a smaller percentage return, stop trading, secure the payouts, and then continue. And then, but I also know other people who do it one at a time, but in a similar mindset. So it sounds like you're going to transition to sort of that style.
Probably, because if I want to focus on maybe have the main capital that I want to grow, 3-5%, and then have most of my funding copied to that, right? So consistent, and then have a couple more funding accounts to just go higher risk. But same thing. I see a very similar pattern. All my payouts are under 2-3%, maybe even 0.5%. To be honest, 0.5%, 1%. Just focus on getting the payout every single time, and that becomes easy because you can risk 1%, make 0.5%, leave the account there, get to the next one, and so on, and just scale the capital. But again, once you hit that cap and firms start to go after you, try to find stuff on you to reduce your funding, then it can be a fall, let's say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what is your advice to traders out there, who maybe are struggling to get funded at the moment? What would you say to them?
I say that to my students also, just use the same. I think the trading style that I made for platform companies is the best. So instead of just going for one account, maybe go for 4, get one, use that account to secure some profits to get you another account. Because when you have one funding account, you just want to trade. If you see an opportunity, you may think it's good. You just want to keep trading it on a funding account because you don't have any other, right? So just use that. It's easy to get now, let's say 500K in funding. It's quite easy, right? Platform targets have gone down, profit splits have gone up, trading days, all of that. Conditions are starting to get better now after the MyForex funds stuff. Prop firms are really switching stuff up.
Yeah.
So yeah, prop firm I still is a very good opportunity for traders at the beginning. Yeah, just get some profits.
Definitely. What would you advise prop firm owners out there? Just going through the situation you've gone through, seeing this MFF stuff, seeing obviously what happened to Naman, for example. What would your advice as someone who uses prop firms? What would your advice to them be? To see what changes or advice would you give them in terms of how to treat the traders?
I mean, from a business owner perspective, if I was to have a funding company, maybe I have one, I don't know. If you make it in a legit way, if you actually care about traders winning because they're going to make you money, why have issues with traders? Try to find profitable traders. Try to help them become funded, right? And use the fees just as running costs, right? But focus on finding traders. But I think most prop firms now, we all know they run the same backends. Don't want to say the company's name, but same backend, same data shared. So if I purchase an account there, another prop firm has my data and all of that. So try to keep it real, try to keep it for the trader. But obviously in this industry, everything is against the trader, right? Traders are just customers for all these companies. But yeah, prop firm owner, if I was to run one, probably get a big investment, run an algo with the data that I have from traders. Because I think that's, if you have a prop firm company, why not use all the data that you have, right? To maybe create an algo, create a system that's profitable. Even you hedge against the losing traders, that's still going to be profitable, right? And then have certain conditions for the profitable traders to copy them. And just use that to gain more investments. It's just like a track record, right? You use the algo, use the fund, you have 6-12 months of record, you have profitability and all of that. Why not use that to gain more capital? And use the funding company just as a data company, right? I think it's pretty straightforward, right?
And what's your goal from here? Not just from here, but what is your goal overall? So next up is obviously build the personal account, gain capital. But what's the goal for you, say 10, 20, 30 years in the future? Where is it you want to end up?
I don't really think that long term. Obviously, I have plans. Now try to have Romania, Bucharest. Again, I'm born there, so I have my trading academy there. I'm trying to build. I'm trying to transition to a more international audience. Now, kind of set up in Bucharest for a year. I want to stay there for one more year. Bought my first supercar there, so it was quite fun. And then maybe next year start moving towards Dubai, because I think this is the future. If I have the track record, everything, build that, become a hedge fund manager, then maybe create my own team to run things, to trade and all of that. Start building more businesses, because trading is just, I don't want to be a trader. I think that's a tough career. That's a very stressful career. Obviously, starting out, trading was the only way to make quick money. You use prop firms, use some money, and then start building. So it's quite a fast way to make money. It's a hard way to make money, but it's a skill that keeps you going. So just focus maybe next, 5 years is a very long time. It's a very long time. Even 1 year is a long time.
Yeah, if you
it's a very long time. Yeah, I mean, I'm only 24, but last 4 years just went past so fast, right? But the growth was really good. That's my goal. Just build a track record, start going through the investment route, maybe expand, not just trading Forex, because there's others, equities, real estate, all of that. If you have a fund, if you make profit, money is going to come to you, right? And trading wise, obviously a lot of traders have educational companies, like courses, all of that. I've tried to provide the best quality I can, but with courses, it's a whole different story because you can offer everything to a person, but you can't guarantee their success, right?
Yeah.
I think you have an education program as well, and you saw that, right? It's nice to help people, but some people don't deserve and don't want to be helped. So you can't really do anything about it.
Most people just, they're not willing to put in the work. It's like you said there, like in terms of a year, like it's a long time.
It's a long
but
time.
Most people don't feel that way. And most people will waste a year. I used to. So it's not like I'm saying that I've always, just been working hard. I've consistently worked hard, but there's a difference between working hard every day, which I would say guarantees success. Doesn't mean it guarantees it in a year, but it guarantees success if you keep doing it, versus doing it for like 1 month every 3 months.
Exactly. It's just about the discipline and consistency. The thing that I said that really helped me grow this skill was just doing the same thing, and I still do it to this day.
What are your thoughts to people though who say about people selling courses? If you're profitable, why do you need to sell a course? What do you think when people say that?
Again, I'm transparent, so it's just extra income, right? If you have your skill, why not use that to help other people and also grow your business, grow your brand? But there are people just trade market there, just use marketing to market the courses, which again, you need to look up who you're learning from. Or how are they trading? Are they legit? And also, are their results that you can replicate? So that's the thing I say to most people when they look for a mentor, not just trading, anything. Does he have results that you can also have? Because if you look up to a very successful investor that maybe his parents were very successful, and you look up to them, like, can you replicate that?
Yeah.
How can you get that money, right? That's why I recommend educating from traders who trade prop firms, because those results cannot be really manipulated, right? Payouts and all of that. If you have the stats, it's something that everyone can do, because I'm no different. So if you sell courses, I think that's fine. I think you also buy courses maybe in other areas.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn about, editing, maybe you buy a course, which is perfectly fine, right? You learn. You lose the years of hard work, years of stress and all of that, get a straightforward process. Just go from there. Courses are not for everyone, of course, right? You can buy a course, but that doesn't guarantee anything, right? But for me, it's just something that I like to do. Like the event I did wasn't really worth my time, let's say. Didn't really gain much, but it was a nice experience. It was nice really seeing people that are interested and happy to learn stuff. So for me, I think, I like doing it, but it's also a very good business to grow on the side, right? And I think you talked about that, right? Because education, like an education company, brings you some revenue and makes you more focused on trading.
Yeah, well, it can do both. It can do both, and then also like with trading, it fulfills you financially, but other than that, it doesn't do much else. Well, the connections you build and to be fair, like I can travel here to Dubai, and I have multiple friends here who are very close to me, but they joined their community years ago. Same with like when I go to Canada, same thing. I've stayed at one of their houses, and those things are priceless.
It's more like a family.
Yeah, exactly. And you won't get that from just trading. Just trading, you can just trade by yourself, and then that's it. Stay in your room and never leave. So there are many benefits to it, and I do understand people's points in terms of like you don't need it. You don't necessarily need it.
No, you can put the hard work in. Man.
Yeah, but with the trading side, it's like it's volatile in terms of even as a consistent trader, there's no guarantee you're going to make money every month. So by having, whether it's a course, it doesn't have to be a course. Course is just one that
be a service.
Yeah, there's one that is there's a demand for a lot of the time, and that's why people do it. People are asking you to make a course,
exactly,
right? So therefore, you can do that. But it could be anything. It could be real estate. It could be any other business. Because you have to remember as well, people assume just because you have a course that you make money. People can have a course and not make any money. People can make a course and do it very poorly, and therefore no one wants to join it.
Yeah.
Or if you do it right, though, people don't realize how much time and energy it does take.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So
it does take time and energy to put into it and to make it good quality and to, answer questions most of all. Because if you're not doing those things, then of course, then it's probably not going to be very good, and people won't want to enjoy it anyway.
Yeah, but people are never happy, are they?
Yeah, this is also
so you can make the best course, they're still gonna say something. You make a poor course, they're still gonna.
It comes down to people's mindset. I think they join thinking it's like a golden ticket. Like if I join this one, I'm
gonna find the golden nugget.
Yeah. When really it's like once you're willing to do the work that's necessary regardless of who you go to. It's like ICT, for example. Everyone says, "Oh, ICT is amazing," but look how many people don't make money using ICT. Not because of ICT.
I think a lot of people.
Yeah, it's because obviously they're not willing to put in the work that's necessary, especially with ICT because there's so much of it. So yeah.
My thoughts on that are just it's too complicated. Trading needs to be simple, right? So find something that works for you, create an edge. It's not that hard. Just find a trading style, back test it, forward test it, and you're gonna be profitable. But going back and stuff like that is sometimes for me it's very hard to, because obviously to sell a service, you also need marketing. And in our industry, you know how marketing works, right? You need to show flashy stuff and all of that, which it doesn't really represent me. I just like, because if you can make, let's say, 10K in a week trading, having 1 or 2 trades, to make that through courses, you need to sell maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 courses, which is very hard in terms of marketing. So it's a very hard process.
Is it something that you feel like you'll do? Because I know like you got the watch, for example.
Yeah.
And then you said you bought a supercar. So is it something that you're going to transition to, you think? Or you just think...
I don't know. I did that just because I don't really usually pay myself.
How do you fit in a McLaren? That's the real question.
That one is, just like...
How do you... Because I don't fit in a McLaren. So how the hell do you fit in one?
The one I got is a bit... Has like a panoramic roof.
Modified. That's
I wanted to get one modified. I was asking around, can you modify the seats and everything? But that one I fit in all right, like just a tiny bit, which is hard. But obviously, it's very hard. I was looking at supercars for quite a while. But
you just need like a G-Wagon, you do. You just need like a big
but it's just
SUV,
boring, right? It's just boring because you can buy a G-Wagon and stuff like that. Doesn't really, because I want to get something for marketing as well.
Of course,
because when people see a supercar, he's legit, right? Or he has a watch, he's legit. He makes money. Happiness-wise, I don't think it made me that happy. I think after a while, you kind of lose the happiness in it. You're more happy just growing. So the McLaren came with all the drama. So I was more focused on that and more upset about that than being happy about the car, right? I want to fix that issue.
It's interesting how they happen at the same time.
Yeah, happen. Maybe bad luck, or maybe just the universe trying to test me. I don't know.
You never know.
Keep moving forward. Can't do anything about it. Can't send the McLaren back. It's paid. Yeah.
That's it. But obviously, moving on, we're going to go into like quick fire questions. So we just have like a handful of questions that we ask at the end. One is, if you could meet anyone in the past or even the present, but like anyone, famous or not, who would it be and why?
I never thought of that, to be honest. I don't really think about it. I kind of lost my thing for role models. Had a thing happen to me recently where I was looking up to some individual for a very long time since I was a kid, and that guy ended up scamming me indirectly, right? So let's imagine 5-6 years you try to replicate, try to be successful, and then he scams you, right? And you're like, my biggest role model is he's a scammer. Who can I look up to? So from the past, don't really know. Maybe some of the greatest traders, greatest risk managers. I don't know. Never thought of that, so I don't have an answer.
So what happened there, though? Is that in the FX space or just generally?
No,
like
generally, big, a very popular and big guy. It was like a networking stuff.
Do they live in Romania?
No. I know Romanians are scammers, but no. It was a worldwide hero, let's say.
Yeah. How have you handled that though?
It was quite sad. Obviously, the looking up part, and then you get scammed, and it kind of makes you think about it, right? Even if that guy scammed him, and anyone can scam, right? So I became way more careful. Would people
know who it is?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Do you want to say who it is?
No, not really. He's a very very big guy on YouTube also. He had a private group, an FT group. People don't know it because it's very well hidden. So it was kind of, It's the Agents Croquet Club, if you know.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. That was the thingy,
Really?
Yeah. People don't know about it, but yeah.
When a story about healthcare is actually about the rise of AI and how AI can help doctors help more people in more places, you get context.
I mean, money-wise, wasn't a big loss.
But so what was it a case of then? They took money but then didn't deliver?
Yeah, exactly. Didn't deliver and try to again a lot of manipulation, right? They sell something and they try to switch things around, shove it in your face. You need to be okay with that, even if it isn't what you want. It just shows the true character of someone, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the thing.
Fair enough. You know, it's sad when these things happen. That's what they always say. Don't meet your heroes. You know, you'll be disappointed.
Yeah, just look up to them and leave it there.
Yeah, just stay there. Yeah.
Leave it there.
Final question for you then. This one should be fun because you're very tall, so I don't know who you'll choose. But if there was a charity boxing fight in the, well, I think I know who you'll choose now that I think about it. But if there's a charity boxing fight in the FX space, you had to pick one opponent, who would it be?
In the FX space?
Just any space if you
want. For fun or yeah, I saw you ask this question quite a lot. I don't know. I don't have a lot of friends in the FX space, but
it doesn't have to be friends.
To fight someone,
even better if it's your enemy.
My enemy. I will fight Lambo Roll for that.
He's your enemy.
He scanned me once when I was first starting. Yeah, sorry to say that. I know you had a podcast, but obviously it was my first Signal channel bot back 4 or 5 years ago. It was a long time, and yeah, you know how it is. You buy something, they don't deliver. And the thing was, I was trying to get a refund because they said you have a refund, and they were just moving you around people until the 30 days passed, and you got nothing. So that was, I don't know. And also I would fight Raja Banks.
And Raja Banks.
Just for fun, yeah. Because I know he's tall, yeah.
Yeah, he's tall. I'm
excited to meet him, and let's see, yeah.
You meet him and punch him straight away.
Just for fun. I know he's a fun guy.
We took a turn there at the end.
I know.
But hey, it's all good. That's what we're here for. But
one for fun and one for
yeah. Well, we're gonna have to set it up now. So when I call you, we'll do the matchmaking.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna try.
But Andrew, no, I appreciate you coming down. Yeah, I wish you all the best as well for the future. No doubt we can probably do this again. Hopefully, maybe we'll do it in Romania. Maybe we'll do it in the UK.
You can come to Romania. Yeah, I have a very nice place to do that.
Yeah, we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, have a nice time in Dubai. All congratulations for everything that you're doing too. Your links will be in the description below. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe.
Professionals who don't have the special, maybe skill set that's relevant for your trial. Because if you're a prosecutor, you got to get 12 people to agree unanimously on something. So you can't be talking above the head of anybody. And I think that's going to be a real focus.
Any salespeople listening to this show? So let's now talk about the defense, because I've been reporting a little bit, like on my Twitter and some of these short recaps that I'm releasing on the podcast every day. But one of the really notable things to me is that the defense seems to be irritating Judge Kaplan. I frankly sort of, I don't know if agree is quite the right word, but let's just put it this way. I believe it was Marc-Antoine Julliard, and then Matt Huang, like Adam Yedidia, Matt Huang, like pretty much like all the witnesses. Whenever they do their cross-examination, there will be sometimes multiple times throughout the questioning a section where they just ask super basic questions that have already been covered, that are not even like anything complicated. Like I remember for Gary Wang, he said, you met Sam at math camp in high school. Like, why are you repeating that? We don't care.
And this judge was a smart judge.
One of my first closings, or I was trying a case and my partner had not finished writing his closing. I was going to do the rebuttal. He was going to do the closing. We were on the last witness. I had to stall. And he had his laptop in the courtroom writing the thing. And the judge started to call me out and said, we're going to take minutes out of your closing now. Every minute you waste here, we're going to take out of your closing. Yeah, this is a real thing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It feels like, I don't know, a sports game. So one thing that I did want to ask is, so, as we discussed, at least so far, more of the objections by the prosecution are being sustained. And then, I'm not joking when I say that it's apparent, just because now the judge has had to ask, like, I don't even know, like 5 times, like, stop with the repetitive questions. It's like a large number so far in just 3 days of 2.5 days of testimony. So, between that and then the fact that sometimes when there's many objections in a row that he has to sustain, he will, like, kind of wearily say it, like, sustained, like, just this sort of like, you're doing that again, like, you kind of know this line of questioning isn't going to be admitted, and so there's a sort of weariness. And at the very beginning, the judge, he told the jury, this is my job, I'm supposed to run the trial and I make the rulings of what goes in and out. But even if I object to a lot of what a lawyer does, or even if I get annoyed at a lawyer, none of this reflects my personal views. But I wondered, even though he made that caveat in the beginning, do you think this is affecting the jury's perception of, I guess in particular, the defense, but Sam Bankman-Fried himself?
You don't want to, as a defense lawyer, get objected to and have that happen to you, right? Because again, if you're feeling it, the jurors are feeling it. You want to be likable because you want that to rub off on your client as a defense lawyer. And you like it if the judge likes you. Judges usually try to treat everybody professionally and not show favoritism to one side or the other. And most often they do a very good job. But if you constantly are asking questions, you're getting objected to and it's being sustained, juries will be like, why are you going, they start to understand that you're asking questions that aren't proper, right? That's why they're being sustained. So again, I'm not there. I don't know how this is exactly going down, the demeanor and the tone, but this is a long trial. Again, I'll just repeat this over and over. You're living with these people for 6 weeks. You want them to like you because you want it to rub off on your client if you're the defense lawyer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This undermines the defense's credibility. That's the bottom line, right? The government is following the rules. The defense is not. That's the message the jury gets. And then when you're closing, and you're going to you need to build up a reserve of credibility during the trial, and then you spend it in the closing. You're going to ask the jury to make inferences, right? You want them to read the evidence a certain way. Well, if they don't trust you, if they think you're a rule breaker, that could undermine the credibility you need to make those points in closing. But it's a long trial and they may be able to repair it. But yeah, there's a lot that happens in the courtroom. Like Brian said, you're in that courtroom and the jury sees everything, right? The way that the jury box is set up, they have the best view of everything. They're watching everything. How do the defense lawyers treat their colleagues? How are they chatting with with Bankman-Fried? What are they wearing? Did they change their clothing? Do they appear sloppy? All of this is being observed. It's all being taken in. It's all part of the fabric. They really will get to know these people by the end of it. And the objections getting sustained is not helpful.
I had this case where we got an acquittal, and I remember a year later I ran into one of the jurors, and it was like a movie theater, so random. And she's like, that was the best experience. She loved it. She's like, I love it. And we thought she hated our client. We thought this woman was going to get our client in a New York minute. But, ultimately, and again, I think part of it was we tried to make it an enjoyable experience for the jurors, the defense lawyer. We wanted to, one, be likable, but also entertain them and have this rapport, even though you can't talk to them directly. And I think you saw the judge instructed them about, if you see a defense lawyer or prosecutor in the elevator, they're not to say hi to you. You can't do things like that. But to Sam's point, they're watching you all the time. They see how you interact with your colleagues. There's times when they get bored and they're looking around and be like, oh, Blank is having coffee again? How many cups of coffee does that prosecutor drink a day? Like, random things happen in their minds, right? And so, when you're there as a lawyer in the trial with a prosecutor defense lawyer, you got to think that this jury, you have to be like a narcissist. Like, everyone's paying attention to me. I got to keep it cool. I got to be likable. I'm going to put my hand around my client sometimes to show them this is a real person, knows real emotions. You do things like that. There's an element of theater to all this that shouldn't be lost on anybody when you're participating in it.
Earlier, Sam, before we started recording, you said that you felt that Judge Kaplan was sustaining some objections from prosecution, meaning, against the defense, that you would have let go through. So why is that? What did you see there?
Yeah, I think on these questions about background facts, I think it is very important for the defense to have an opportunity in their own words to get testimony that may take the sting out of the atmosphere. Even innocuous questions that are just a palate cleanser from what could have been just a devastating direct, I think you should give the defense some leeway to do that and not cut them off at the knees. It is not that harmful to the government or to anyone in the courtroom to just give them a little leeway on these questions. I don't think any of the objections I've seen sustained fall in the category of reversible error.
And wait, just out of curiosity, are you talking about the repetitive questions, or are you talking? Oh, okay.
Repetitive questions or questions on basic background that was covered in the direct. You went to MIT, you met at math camp. These things, I just don't see how that prejudices the government. If the defense was eliciting testimony that shouldn't be allowed in a courtroom and could improperly influence the jury, sure, sustain that objection. These objections are being sustained largely to move the trial along, but I think that it's unnecessary to be that strict given the rules that go into criminal process. They don't have discovery. Not really. I mean, they have some discovery, but not really. They don't get a transcript of what the witnesses are going to say. They don't get to interview them or depose them ahead of time. I think that it would be better for the appellate record for a fair trial to just let them have it. Let them do that stuff.
Okay. So, but I actually feel like it's like it tends to be other questions that actually get the objections. Like he keeps saying, stop repeating questions, but it's a little bit different because the ones that where there are objections from the prosecution, those get sustained. Like there was one set I remember where I think it was Adam Yedidia. The defense kind of was trying to ask questions like what was in Sam's mind in various ways and get Adam to say like Sam, was trying to do this or felt that or whatever. And then those kept getting objected to and sustained. So would you agree that those were correctly called?
I think that's appropriate to sustain because the witness can't speculate about somebody else's mind. However, I can tell you somebody who taught me how to ask those questions properly was Judge Kaplan. And I think he could say, listen, I'm sustaining this because no speculation, but why don't we, and he has asked questions when the government wasn't eliciting something the way that he thought could be clearer, he would dive in and ask questions and then remove himself. And I think he could here show the defense lawyer, all right, sir, do you know whether Sam had a belief about X? Yes or no? Why do you believe it? What do you believe?
Like evidence, not got it. Don't give us your opinion. Do you have an instance in mind when Sam said XYZ or something like that? Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit before about how Adam Yedidia has immunity, how, actually we didn't go into detail on this, but Gary Wang has what's called cooperation because he's pleaded guilty. And at the very end, they discussed like what that actually means. And they said that he is testifying here in cooperation in hopes of basically serving no prison time, and that the prosecution at the end will write a letter, or I think it's they can write a letter called a K-5 to the judge about his sentencing. And then they went into detail about how his understanding is that the prosecutors do not promise to make any recommendation about the sentencing, but I think it's just a letter kind of describing his behavior or something like that. So, and if I got any of that wrong, please correct me. But, what is your take on what his testimony, and granted, I know it's not finished yet, but on how that could affect, obviously, his sentencing, but frankly, for any of the others, Caroline Ellison and Ashad Singh, who have also pleaded guilty.
Yeah, that's a practice in the Southern District. It's different in every district, but I think, that letter is not going to be written for a long time after this trial. When Gary gets sentenced in the lead up, and they'll submit it, and that's a letter that they write there. They don't recommend a particular sentence, but the unspoken institutional prerogative in the Southern District is that if someone cooperates and they get this letter, most often they don't get prison time.
Oh, wow.
So there's a strong chance that Gary won't get any prison time, or he'll get very little. And this is an extraordinary case with a $10 billion loss amount or whatever it is. So I think this is something that, we'll expect to happen when he gets sentenced. He will get sentenced. He has pleaded guilty. He has to get sentenced. That's going to happen. And they'll write a letter, and it will discuss not only his cooperation at trial, but his prior cooperation. And the judge has seen and heard this. So, this letter, to the extent it's going to say something, they'll say, as Your Honor remembers, he got up and testified for 2 days and blah, blah, blah. And the jury found him credible, blah, 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 for this reason.
Okay. And would you also say that Caroline Ellison and Ashad Singh are also likely to get no prison time? Because I remember that Caroline pleaded guilty to more charges.
It's hard to predict. I don't know Kaplan's particular sentencing of cooperators, so some of this will be particular to him, and maybe Sam knows, but the general practice, and again, I'm speaking generalities here, is that a cooperator who gets one of these letters is not likely to get prison time, or very little.
Wow.
I think Brian's right, but to be specific, is the category of white collar crime. In the world of white collar crime. In the world of violent crime or other things, it may be different. But in white collar crime, Brian is right that a 5K letter with judges like Kaplan, they understand that in order for the government to make cases, the cooperators have to get a payoff. And so if they do their part and the government backs them up at sentencing, he needs to give them a significant reward. Now, will he give them no time? Will he give them a light set? Will he give them a year? That is hard to know. And I do think that for Kaplan in particular, and most judges in that district, they will look at, well, what order did you come in and cooperate? Were you the first? Or did you come in when the government already had what it needed? How helpful was your cooperation? Was it really important? Or was it just, duplicative, unnecessary? All of this goes into the mix.
All right. So then one last thing is that, at this point in time, it does look like it's going pretty poorly for the defense. And there's been a lot of speculation on Twitter. Let's just assume, because of how it's going so far, that the defense does not win. What do you think will happen at that point?
They're going to appeal the sentence. They're going to appeal the conviction. I think that's not even an open question. When people are convicted, almost always there's an appeal. Not always, but almost always there's an appeal.
That's right.
And what would the strategy be at that point? Because, yeah.
It's too early to tell. We don't know how the rest of the trial is going to shake out and what the issues that they might think there are to appeal. But typically you try to find a few issues that you think are the most viable on appeal. You don't try to appeal every single issue because, the kitchen sink technique does not usually work at the circuit court level, which is who the appeal gets heard by. So it's much too early to tell what's going to happen. And trials are dynamic things. Things go in different directions than both the defense and the prosecutors and even the judge expect in trial. It's a living, breathing thing, almost, a trial. And so it's just too early to know. But by the time we get near the end of this, there might be a few issues that we've all spotted or the defense has spotted and made a big deal about. Like they might submit briefing during this about an issue, or they might ask for certain things, before the jury arrives, that we'll learn about it and see what they are focused on.
It's important to remember also that it's not just what happens in the courtroom. There are evidentiary rulings about what the defense was not allowed to do during the trial that got briefed before we ever got to the courtroom, right? And those could be issues that the defense says, look, we didn't get a fair trial. The judge would not let us say X, Y, Z in opening, and we weren't allowed to argue it during the trial, and we need a new trial.
Right, like about...
Great point, Sam.
Yeah, you're not allowed to use these arguments. All their proposed witnesses were dismissed for not being relevant or whatever it was. So,
yeah, I would say, I think you'd probably agree, Brian, that from what we've seen in the courtroom so far, as far as once the tape started, nothing has happened that I would call reversible error. But there could be some issues in terms of what happened in the pretrial briefing.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys, this has been just a really great discussion. I'm so glad that I was able to get your perspectives on what happened. Where can people learn more about each of you and your work?
you can go to our website and